Chapter 223. The boat rowed towards the water cloud temple on the other side of Mirror Lake. Chu Xiu and the other two sat at the bow, drinking and chatting, while Ibu San rowed at the stern. But at this time, he did not have the slightest complaint and was even ecstatic in his heart. He was just an ancient martial art practitioner at the bottom of the Ji State Prefecture, but now he could row a boat for 3 outstanding individuals ranked on the Longhu list. This was a great qualification. After the God Weapon Convention, this would be enough for him to brag about for 3 years. After reaching the other side, Chu Xiu found that the Water Cloud Temple was really a small temple, with only a Taoist temple and a few guest rooms. There was a row of pavilions outside the Water Cloud Temple, specially prepared for people who came to Mirror Lake for a walk to rest. At this time, there were hundreds of cultivators gathered around the pavilion. There were loose cultivators and cultivators from various aristocratic families. When they saw the 3 of them, they immediately started discussing among themselves. However, they could not help but step aside, giving the best position in the center to the 3 of them. Immortal was the local snake of Eastern Qi, and nearly half of the people here were from Eastern Qi. Seeing Immortal come, they naturally gave him face. Some of the West Chu cultivators were also greeting Xie Xiaolu. It was clear that they knew this famous tiger and dragon list elite. Chu Xiu was the least famous one here. Not many people knew him, only a few people from northern Yan knew Chu Xiu, and among them was Chu Xiu's acquaintance, Bai Wuji. Seeing Chu Xiu come, Bai Wuji coldly snorted. Since when did this Chu Xiu hang out with Immortal and Xie Xiaolu? Although he was a little unhappy with Chu Xiu, the God Weapon Conference was about to start. He did not want to waste his energy here, so he just coldly snorted at Chu Xiu and did not speak. On the other side, Xie Xiaolu saw Bai Wuji's expression and whispered to Chu Xiu, "Is there a grudge?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "He is the one who has enmity with me, not the other way around. Previously, I had a few conflicts with him in the northern drifting snow city. After that, because Wind Sweeping Tower ranked me above Bai Wuji on the Longhu leaderboard, he felt that it was unfair in his heart. A few days ago, he even caused trouble for me at the Dragon Assembling Pavilion. Brother Emo saw it." When Emo Tianlin heard this, he shook his head and said, "Bai Wuji cares too much about fame and fortune. Strength isn't something that Wind Sweeping Tower can decide, it's something that we have to fight for." Zhang Qingzhen had been number 1 on the Tiger and Dragon roll for more than 10 years. Even if Wind Sweeping Tower said that he was not number 1, who would believe it? If you, Bai Wuji, had the ability, even if Wind Sweeping Tower ranked you last, the people of the Jianghu would not agree. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Unfortunately, in the Jianghu, fame and fortune are the most difficult things to let go of. However, whether Bai Wuji can let go of it or not is none of my business, as long as he doesn't provoke me." Everyone sat in the pavilion for a while. Then, an old Taoist priest in his 60s walked out of the Water Cloud Temple. His gray robe was very clean, and his hair was not gray at all. His spirit, qi, and spirit were very good. Chu Xiu let out a soft cry of surprise. He sensed a very strange feeling from the old Taoist priest. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but if he had to forcibly describe it, the word natural would be more suitable. That's right, it wasn't the aura of a martial artist, but a natural feeling. Seeing Taoist Master Xianqing come out, some of the loose cultivators present bowed to him and greeted him. Their attitudes were extremely courteous. These rogue cultivators did not have a master to guide them in their cultivation. In the past, they had to rely on themselves to comprehend the Tao. Often, they would be stuck at a bottleneck for a long time. No one knew who happened to pass by the Water Cloud Monastery and heard Taoist priest Xianqing preaching to the little Taoist children. It was obviously some very basic principles, to the point of being straightforward, but it gave that martial artist an epiphany and allowed him to make a breakthrough. After this news spread, it attracted many individual cultivators. Every day, they would listen to Taoist priest Xianqing's lectures. Of course, not everyone would gain anything from it. However, everyone thought that Taoist priest Xianqing's lectures were very good. Some of the obscure Taoist scriptures were easy to understand in Taoist priest Xianqing's lectures. Some of the individual cultivators who had cultivated some Taoist cultivation methods had gained something. When these people did not understand, they would ask Taoist priest Xiancheng for advice. However, Taoist priest Xiancheng said that he did not know martial arts and only knew how to recite Taoist scriptures. Therefore, when people came to ask him for advice, he would answer kindly. Of course, it had to be a question that had nothing to do with martial arts. Looking at the people around him, Taoist priest Xiancheng's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Obviously, he did not expect so many people to come today. Moreover, there were many young talents with profound cultivation among them. However, Taoist priest Xiancheng did not say anything. Behind him, 6 little Taoist children, who were about 10 years old, sat obediently under Taoist priest Xiancheng and listened attentively. Taoist priest Xiancheng did not take out any books. He just casually played with a horsetail whisk. He looked at the 6 little Taoist children and said, "Today, we will be talking about 5 energies collecting." As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned except for the martial artists who had heard Taoist priest Xiancheng's preaching before. An ordinary Taoist priest was preaching about 5 energies collecting to a group of little kids who had not even learned martial arts? Was he crazy? Some of the martial artists who came from major powers were sneering in their hearts. Previously, they had heard that this Taoist priest seemed to have some capabilities. Now, it seemed like he was just a lunatic. An ordinary Taoist priest actually dared to talk about 5 energies collecting? Most likely, he had not even seen an expert who had reached the 5 energies collecting realm before. The reactions of the outside world did not affect Taoist priest Xiancheng's preaching. He only said slowly, 5 energies collecting is a cultivation technique of my Taoist lineage. However, today I will not be talking about martial arts. Instead, I will be talking about intent cultivation and the true meaning of 5 energies collecting. In the 5 energies collecting, the heart stores the spirit, the liver stores the soul, the spleen stores the intent, the lungs store the spirit, and the kidneys store the essence. At the same time, the 5 organs of the human body correspond to the 5 elements of heaven and earth. My Taoist lineage cultivates the body, but at the same time, we also cultivate the heaven and earth. For example, the heart stores the spirit. It corresponds to the southern Scarlet Emperor's fire. It is violent and intense, restless and uneasy. How should one cultivate in such a manner? It's very simple. The heart stores the spirit. You have to focus and focus your mind. Your own temperament will be like a jumping monkey. This is the heart monkey. What you have to do is to subdue it. As the saying goes, sever the heart monkey to become Wukong. This is the logic. Subdue the restless heart monkey in your heart. Then your spirit will have roots. You will be able to soar in the universe and return to your position. The great Tao is the simplest. No matter where it is the same logic. For example, the Buddhist lineage emphasized the emptiness of the 4 elements. When mortals see the world, they tend to see the human heart as the main focus. This leads to their hearts being capricious and their thoughts wandering. But when the Buddha's heart sees the world, it is a stretch of clarity. Only then will one be able to comprehend emptiness and the meaning of Zen. Compared to my Taoist lineage, the Buddhist monks clearly prefer to be tactful. You guys better not learn from them. As he spoke slowly, he even teased the Buddhist sects, the old rivals of the Taoist sections. Instantly, the few little Taoist children broke into smiles. As for the other martial artists present, they all had different expressions. Some understood, and some felt that it was not bad. However, most of the martial artists had a look of disdain on their faces. What the hell was he talking about? Subduing the heart monkey and emptiness of the 4 elements? Did he really think that he could break through the 5 chis toward the origin realm after subduing it? What kind of joke was this? Chu Xiu and the other 2 revealed a look of contemplation, especially Chu Xiu. He was about to break through to the 3-flower realm, so he attached great importance to the cultivation of the state of mind. Those who did not cultivate the state of mind naturally felt that what Taoist priest Xiancheng said was nonsense and useless. However, for Chu Xiu, what Taoist priest Xiancheng said made him feel like he was suddenly enlightened. These words were useless for cultivation itself. It could not increase one's cultivation, and it was not a way to cultivate martial arts. However, Taoist priest Xiancheng's words seemed to have pointed out a bright path for Chu Xiu. As long as he followed this direction, the 3 flower and 5 cheese would be visible. Xie Xiaolu murmured, "This old Taoist is quite skilled. Do you guys think he really doesn't know martial arts?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I can't be sure. What he said has nothing to do with martial arts. It is just pure Taoist theory of cultivating the mind. It is normal for a person who has been immersed in Taoism for many years to be able to understand this. However, if this old Taoist really knows martial arts, then his strength will definitely be beyond our imagination." Xie Xiaolu nodded. This old Taoist's understanding of the 5 Qis toward the origin realm was dozens of times more thorough than the martial artists who had already stepped into this realm. If he really was a martial artist, then he would probably be a grandmaster who could establish his own sect. Taoist priest Xianqing stretched his body. He had just talked about the 5 Qis toward the origin realm, and there were still 4 more that he was going to talk about. However, at this moment, a sharp female voice filled with hatred suddenly came from outside the crowd. "Chu Xiu, it's actually you." The crowd looked back and saw a skinny woman dressed in a white warrior suit. Her eyes were red as she pointed at Chu Xiu. She looked like she wanted to swallow him alive. This woman was none other than Yan Tingting of the Divine Force sect. In fact, Yan Tingting did not plan to come to this God Weapon conference. In fact, the Divine Force sect did not even plan to participate in the entire conference. After all, there were no outstanding people among the younger generation of the Divine Force sect. Even if they came, they would only embarrass themselves. Therefore, it was better not to come. However, Yan Tingting had been sulking in the Divine Force sect. Yan Huainan felt sorry for his daughter and did not want to see her sulking. Therefore, he sent her to participate in the God Weapon Conference. But in fact, she had come to the land of Eastern Qi to relax. Most importantly, Yan Huainan knew why Yan Tingting was so sulky. This time, the God Weapon Conference in Eastern Qi was attended by all the outstanding young talents of the pugilistic world. Yan Huainan did not care whether the other party was from a big sect or a common person in the pugilistic world. As long as Yan Tingting liked one, Yan Huainan would agree. Anyway, it was fine as long as she could forget about that useless Yu Luchuan. Chapter 224. In fact, Yan Tingting was in a good mood on the way to Eastern Qi. After all, Yu Luchuan had been dead for a long time. She also heard that Chu Xiu had been chased to Wei County by a few major forces, and no one knew whether he was dead or alive. The knot in her heart was finally resolved. Therefore, after arriving at the Ji State Prefecture, Yan Tingting enjoyed herself for 2 days. Today, she saw that the weather was good, so she came to the Mirror Lake for a walk. When she saw a group of people gathered here, she came to watch the fun. However, who would have thought that she would see the person she hated so much, Chu Xiu? He was actually still alive. Yan Tingting had never seen Chu Xiu before, but she hated Chu Xiu so much. Naturally, she bought a portrait of Chu Xiu from Wind Sweeping Tower. On the contrary, Chu Xiu had never seen Yan Tingting. He had heard that the Divine Force sect had participated in hunting him down and so on. However, the Divine Force sect was just putting on an act, so Chu Xiu did not care. Now that he saw Yan Tingting's expression, Chu Xiu was dumbfounded. Who was this woman? Why did she look like she was going to swallow him? As for the others, when they saw this scene, they all smiled ambiguously. Looking at Yan Tingting's expression, they thought that Chu Xiu had played some unfaithful man's tricks and abandoned her after seducing her. That was why Yan Tingting came looking for him. However, at this time, Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Who are you? Do I know you?" Hearing this, everyone was stunned. What was going on? The woman looked like she was going to swallow him alive, but the man did not know him at all? At this time, Yan Tingting was even more furious. She hated Chu Xiu to death, but Chu Xiu did not know her at all. Was there anything more ironic than this? Bai Wuji looked at Chu Xiu with a gloating expression and said, "This is Yan Tingting from the Divine Force sect. You killed her beloved, but now she doesn't even recognize you. Isn't that a bit too much?" Hearing Bai Wuji's words, Chu Xiu finally understood that they were here because of Yu Luchuan. Although killing the Yu clan of Bailing was a crucial step for Chu Xiu to enter the Longhu leaderboard, to be honest, Chu Xiu did not really care about it. For the current Chu Xiu, he could destroy a family like the Yu clan of Bailing with a wave of his hand. Was there a need for him to remember something like this? Therefore, Chu Xiu spread out his hands and said to Yen Tingting, "Are you here to take revenge for that trash, Yu Luchuan? To be honest, I don't understand you. The dignified miss of the Divine Force sect actually fell in love with that trash, and because of that trash, you even chased after me. Is it worth it? Is the power of love so terrifying?" At this time, everyone around finally understood. It was not a drama of abandonment, but rather, Chu Xiu had killed the lover of the Divine Force sect's Mississippi. She was here to take revenge. However, they also liked to watch this kind of revenge drama. At least it was more interesting than listening to the old Taoist priest Xian Cheng's nonsense. When Yen Tingting heard Chu Xiu calling Yu Luchuan trash, she shouted with bloodshot eyes, "Chu Xiu! I'll kill you! I'm going to kill you!" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "There are many people in this world who want to kill me. It doesn't matter if you're here or not. However, does your father know that you want to kill me? Sect Master Yen is a sensible man. If he really wanted to kill me, the Divine Force sect wouldn't have just put up a show." Yen Tingting looked at the Divine Force sect's martial artists beside her with bloodshot eyes and said with hatred, "All of you, go. Kill Chu Xiu." Yen Tingting had more than 10 Divine Force sect's martial artists with her. Most of them were at the innate stage or physical invulnerability. Only 2 old men were at the 3-flower realm. Aside from Yen Huainan, the Divine Force sect's other martial artists weren't that strong. Most of the martial artists who protected Yen Tingting were at the physical invulnerability realm and inner invulnerability realm. Martial artists of this level could keep Yen Tingting safe in Yan'an. This time, because they were coming to Eastern Qi, Yen Huainan had 2 old men from the Divine Force sect protect Yen Tingting. He was afraid that something might happen to his precious daughter. The other people from the Divine Force sect wanted to make a move, but they were stopped by the 2 old men from the Divine Force sect. The 2 men asked Chu Xiu with a serious expression, "Aren't you a killer from the Blue Dragon Society? How did you become a member of the Guanzhong torture room?" It was normal for the other martial artists to not recognize the Guanzhong torture room. However, as one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, the Divine Force sect naturally recognized the symbol of the Guanzhong torture room. The Northern Yen martial artist who had seen Chu Xiu in the Dragon Gathering Pavilion a few days ago said, "How old is your information? This is the Guanxi Patrol Inspector of the Guanzhong torture room now." As soon as he said this, Bai Wuji immediately glared at him. "You talk too much." When the 2 old men from the Divine Force sect heard this, their expressions changed slightly. If Chu Xiu was still a small killer from the Blue Dragon Society, as long as he was not in the territory of the Heavenly Sin Division, they would still dare to make a move. The killers of the Blue Dragon Society were everywhere in the martial world. They had never heard that the Blue Dragon Society would make a big move to avenge a small killer. However, the Guanzhong torture room was different. Moreover, Chu Xiu was the patrol inspector of the Guanzhong torture room. Of course, they knew what the position of the patrol inspector was. Even in the Guanzhong torture room, the patrol inspector was the backbone of the power. If they really killed Chu Xiu here, then the Divine Force sect would definitely become the enemy of the Guanzhong torture room. Although the Guanzhong torture room had been very low-key in recent years, only moving around in the Guanzhong Pass and rarely appearing in the martial world, even in the songs of the martial world, the Guanzhong torture room did not have a place in the martial world. However, those who came from the big sects knew that the strength of the Guanzhong torture room was not inferior to some of the top sects in the martial world. At the very least, they were much stronger than the Divine Force sect. Therefore, the 2 old men immediately stood in front of Yen Tingting and tried to persuade her, "Miss, forget it. The dead cannot come back to life. Even if you kill Chu Xiu, Yu Luchuan will not come back to life. Look at the young talents in the God Weapon Conference. Which one of them is not stronger than Yu Luchuan? Moreover, the current Chu Xiu is not the same as before. He is the patrol inspector of the Guanzhong torture room. Once we touch him, we will become enemies with the Guanzhong torture room. At that time, it will bring great trouble to the Divine Force sect. Yan Tingting did not care about this at this time. Seeing that the people on her side did not make a move, she took out a dagger and placed it on her neck. She shouted, "Are you going to make a move or not? If you don't make a move, I will die. At that time, I want to see how you will explain to my father." Yan Tingting's action immediately frightened the warriors of the Divine Force sect. The two old men hurriedly smiled bitterly and said, "Miss, calm down. Calm down. We will make a move now." They had served Yan Tingting for so many years. In the past, when they were in the south of Yan Tingting was actually very unruly and unruly. When the young masters of the large clans offended her, Yan Tingting immediately ordered people to break their legs. If those people wanted to take revenge, then Yan Tingting would directly use her father's mode. It was because of her protective father that no one in the south of Yan dared to offend Yan Tingting. However, the problem was that Yan Tingting could only be said to be a little unruly in the past. She was not like now, actually using her own life to threaten the interests of the Divine Force sect. This was simply nonsense. However, no matter how ridiculous Yan Tingting was, they still had to make a move. Otherwise, if something really happened to this miss in their hands, they would not have an easy time either. Thinking about how much Yan Huainan treasured his daughter, these disciples of the Divine Force sect trembled. Since they did not want to die, the person who would die could only be Chu Xiu. Although this was not the south of Yan, it was also not Guanzhong. In an instant, over 10 warriors of the Divine Force sect surrounded Chu Xiu. They took out their weapons and glared at Chu Xiu fiercely. One of the elders held a long saber in his hand and stared at Chu Xiu. He said in a deep voice, "Chu Xiu, we do not want to be enemies with you, nor do we want to incur the wrath of the Guanzhong torture room. However, as you have seen, you have offended the miss greatly. We have no choice but to make a move. If you surrender now and let the miss feel at ease, I can still make the decision to try my best to preserve your life. When the time comes, the Guanzhong torture room will come to collect you." Chu Xiu looked straight at the elder, and his tone did not change at all. He said, "Old man, do you really think that those who can become patrol in a place like the Guanzhong torture room, which does not look at background and only looks at ability, are all idiots? How can you say such ridiculous things?" A cold look appeared in the elder's eyes as he said, "Since you do not know what is good for you, then don't blame me for being ruthless." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I have something to say to you. The Divine Force sect belongs to Yan Huainan, but your lives are your own. It is not easy for an old man to live to such an old age. Wouldn't it be better to retire peacefully from the martial world and retire? Why must you meet a violent death? How inauspicious." Chu Xiu's words were very vicious, especially to a warrior who was not young anymore. It was no different from cursing the other party to die. The elder said coldly, "A violent death? I want to see today who the violent death is." Before he could finish speaking, Chu Xiu had already moved. His movement caused the weather to change. He formed a seal with one hand, and the power of the internal binding seal erupted. He could move unhindered in the heavens and earth. This was the extreme speed. The red sleeve blade was unsheathed. Before the blood-colored edge could completely shine, it was wrapped in endless black mist. Chu Xiu's blade, Chu Xiu's hand, and Chu Xiu's eyes were already filled with an extremely dense demonic aura of death. The 3 blades of Avicii. In the face of a warrior at the 3-flower realm, Chu Xiu immediately unleashed the second of the 3 blades of Avicii. It was even mixed with the power of the great chaos of heaven and earth. This blade was the pinnacle of speed and power. The elder from the divine martial gate didn't even have the time to react. By the time he reacted, Chu Xiu had already appeared in front of him. The blade that was surging with demonic aura slashed down. Although the elder had also erupted with all the astral energy in his body in an attempt to raise his blade to block, he was forcibly sliced into 2 by the blade. His corpse fell to the ground with a loud bang, but strangely, not a single drop of blood flowed out. Chapter 225. At that moment, Chu Xiu stood there with his sword in hand. The crimson blade was wrapped in black mist, and there was not even the slightest emotion in his eyes. He looked at the people from the divine martial sect as if he was looking at a group of dead people. In the past, Chu Xiu would forcibly suppress the demonic qi in his body after using the 3 cuts of Avici. However, this time, Chu Xiu did not continue to suppress the demonic qi. Instead, he allowed it to surge in his body. Looking at the people from the divine force sect, Chu Xiu's voice was extremely cold, without the slightest emotion. It was so stiff that it was like a mechanical puppet. I'm not good at saving people, but I'm good at killing people. Since you're all tired of living, then I'll fulfill your wish. I'll let you be the role models of loyalty to the sect. Another old man from the divine force sect looked at Chu Xiu and the corpse on the ground, dumbfounded. He even suspected that what he saw was an illusion. Chu Xiu was a physical invulnerability expert, but he killed a 3-flower realm martial artist with a single slash. If this kind of thing was said by someone else, others would definitely think it was nonsense. However, the result was right before their eyes. Not only could the people from the divine force sect not accept it, but even the other martial artists present were shocked. When Chu Xiu did not move, they all came with the mood to watch the show. However, when Chu Xiu moved, everyone's expression changed. With this kind of strength, let alone the top 20 on the Longhu leaderboard, he could probably stand shoulder to shoulder with the top 10 or even the top 5, right? Seeing this scene, everyone subconsciously retreated, opening up some distance between them. Mo Tianlin murmured, "No wonder Uncle Qi, the king of Annals consecrator, lost to him." As expected, this Chu Xiu probably has the strength to fight against the 3-flower realm. It should be said that he can instantly kill most 3-flower realm martial artists. Xie Xiaolu looked at Chu Xiu, raised his eyebrows and said, "Uncle Qi, who was guarding the 7th floor of the Dragon Gathering Pavilion, also lost to him? But don't be surprised by Chu Xiu's strength. Sometimes a fight depends on the brain. This Chu Xiu's brain is not inferior to his martial arts. Do you really think he can kill those with 3-flower realm at one's prominence like killing chickens? It was just a show of strength. In terms of aura, he had already suppressed the divine martial sect. Although he was alone, his aura was stronger than the dozen people from the divine martial sect. Those people from the divine force sect have already lost their morale. Facing Chu Xiu, they are all afraid. Those who have cowardice in their hearts, no matter how strong they are, have already been defeated before the battle even started. Xie Xiaolu himself was an expert with the blade. Different from the sword, the blade was tyrannical and focused on imposing manner. Chu Xiu's blade not only made his own imposing manner stand at the peak, but it also cut off all of the opponent's imposing manner. At this time, the people from the divine force sect in the field were indeed as Xie Xiaolu had guessed. Under Chu Xiu's stunning and even frightening blade, their courage had been cut off, and they were afraid. This was completely different from the script they had imagined. The demonic qi around Chu Xiu had not dissipated, and he walked toward the group of people from the divine force sect with a terrifying demonic qi and death intent. In this world, you can't wake up a person who is pretending to be asleep, nor can you stop a person who is courting death. Originally, I didn't want to kill before the God Weapon Conference began. Since you guys are courting death, then I will fulfill your wish. It will also help my blade sharpen. Chu Xiu's voice was gloomy and cold, without the slightest emotion. At this time, his entire body was being corroded by the demonic qi of the 3 blades of Avici, but Chu Xiu did not have the slightest intention of suppressing it. After using the 3 sabers of Avici for such a long time, Chu Xiu was also constantly familiarizing himself with the power of this saber. He was also constantly familiarizing himself with the power of the backlash. Now, he was confident that he could suppress the backlash from the second saber. The most important thing was that when he listened to Taoist Xiancheng's sermon just now, he had some enlightenment, cutting off the inner ape to become Wukong. Now, the demonic qi's backlash affected Chu Xiu's mind, causing his heart to be filled with hatred and demonic qi, turning him into a demon ape. In the past, Chu Xiu's method was to use his own mental power and the inner lion seal to forcibly destroy the power of the backlash. This ensured that he would not be affected by the power of the 3 blades of Avici. But now, Chu Xiu had another idea. Whether it was the inner demon or the inner ape, it was something that belonged to him. Why did he have to destroy it instead of subduing it and using it for his own use? What Taoist Xiancheng talked about was the 5 qis collecting in mind, not martial arts. Therefore, it could be applied everywhere. Even though Chu Xiu had not yet reached the 3 flowers at one's prominence realm, it did not hinder Chu Xiu from comprehending and using it. Right now, Chu Xiu was doing this. He treated the demonic qi's backlash as a part of his body. No matter how the demonic qi affected his mind, he tried his best to empty it to the extreme. At this moment, Chu Xiu's heart was like an 8 trigrams furnace, refining his inner ape. No matter how strong the demonic qi was, it could only be used as fuel for this 8 trigrams furnace, allowing Chu Xiu to completely subdue the inner ape. The others could not see anything from Chu Xiu's current state, but Taoist Xiancheng, who was standing at the back, frowned and mumbled. He only heard it once, and he understood the principle of subduing the inner ape. This kind of comprehension is very rare among the younger generation. Unfortunately, he walked the wrong path. No, it should be said that he knew he was walking the wrong path, but he still chose to walk it. Taoist Xiancheng shook his head, feeling a little conflicted. Listening to his sermon, Chu Xiu comprehended the principle, and then immediately started killing. Did this count as indirectly killing? It seemed like he had to keep a low profile in the future. He couldn't say these things in public. At this moment, Chu Xiu walked towards the people from the Divine Martial Sect. Without waiting for the people from the Divine Martial Sect to speak, he directly slashed down with his saber. The demonic qi of the Avicii Dao's 3 sabers contained the power of the blood-refined deity shield. When the 2 of them combined, the power was extremely evil, causing the old man from the Divine Martial Sect to be extremely shocked. He turned to the few Xiantian realm martial artists and shouted, "You guys protect the young Mississippi. The rest of you, follow me." Just now, Chu Xiu's strike had gained the upper hand by a show of strength, and it had already destroyed their courage. At this moment, they were not thinking about how to kill Chu Xiu, but how to survive under Chu Xiu's blade. The old man from the Divine Martial Sect held a long spear in his hand, and a violent burst of gang qi erupted. He smashed it down towards Chu Xiu. Although his momentum was surging, it was suppressed by Chu Xiu. Just now, Chu Xiu had unleashed his speed and strength, as well as his own essence, qi, and spirit to the extreme. He had gained the upper hand by making a show of strength, which was why he was able to instantly kill an unsuspecting 3-flower realm warrior. Now that they were in a real battle, Chu Xiu naturally couldn't slash the same way. However, with his current strength and foundation, it was enough to compete with ordinary 3-flower realm martial artists, especially since the old man from the Divine Martial Sect was not young anymore. He was no longer at his peak. Under this attack, the other party directly grunted and took a few steps back. At this time, several other inner and physical invulnerability realm martial artists of the Divine Martial Sect also rushed forward. Powerful gang qi suddenly erupted. Under the siege, there was a murderous intent coming from all directions. The demonic qi around Chu Xiu flourished. He could still continue to suppress the power of the 3 blades of Avicii. At that moment, his whole body was soaked in demonic qi. It was as if a demon king had descended. That pure and evil demonic qi with monstrous hatred was probably something that even a real demonic expert would be ashamed of. The long saber slashed down, and in an instant, with Chu Xiu as the center, a magnificent saber light spilled out. There was a bright crimson in the black demonic qi. Those Divine Martial Sect martial artists were shocked to find that their gang qi was easily torn apart like tofu in the evil and bright saber light. If Chu Xiu's red sleeve saber of the dusk drizzle was just a continuous drizzle, then now it was a torrential rainstorm. Under the siege, those inner invulnerability realm martial artists couldn't resist and were directly beheaded. As for the other physical invulnerability realm martial artists, they were not much better off. They were directly blasted away, and the weapons in their hands suddenly spat out blood. With one move, he directly broke through the siege of several people with brute force. The onlooking martial artists, especially those martial artists of the same realm as Chu Xiu, All had grave expressions. This level of gang qi was already beyond their imagination. It wasn't a matter of whether you wanted to block it or not, but whether you could block it or not. After one slash, Chu Xiu slightly frowned. The demonic qi attracted by the 3 blades of Avicii was really not that easy to subdue. Every time he used it, the demonic qi became more turbulent. In the end, the demonic qi was so strong that Chu Xiu had to use the 3 blades of Avicii. Take the young lady and escape. The old man from the divine martial sect with the spear rushed up again, but what greeted him was an overwhelming and powerful saber light. Those innate realm martial artists wanted to take Yan Tingting away, but at this time, Yan Tingting stared at Chu Xiu with bloodshot eyes. Her eyes were filled with a strong sense of unwillingness. Previously, she wanted to kill Chu Xiu, but her father didn't allow it and even grounded her. Now that she finally had a chance to take revenge, the strength that Chu Xiu displayed made her despair. Young lady, let's go. This Chu Xiu's strength is simply abnormal. Even if Martial Uncle Qiu is in the 3-flower realm, he won't be able to resist for long. The other disciples of the divine martial sect were still trying to persuade her. However, no matter what they said, Yan Tingting still didn't move. The hatred in her eyes grew stronger and stronger. Neither Chu Xiu nor Nie Donglu understood why Yan Tingting would like a good-for-nothing like Yu Luchuan. After all, in their opinion, there was nothing good about Yu Luchuan other than his good looks. Even if Nie Donglu claimed that he was good friends with Yu Luchuan, it was only because of his status. Otherwise, how could a good-for-nothing like him be worthy of calling him brother? There were many beautiful women in the world, and there were also many handsome men. With the power of the divine martial sect, Yan Tingting's future husband would definitely be the kind of person with good looks. Unfortunately, Yan Tingting only loved Yu Luchuan. It could only be said that there was no reason for love. Just like Yan Tingting now, killing Chu Xiu was not only to avenge Yu Luchuan, but also to become her obsession. Chapter 226. A warrior at the 3-flower realm of converging one's essence, qi, and spirit were unified. Compared to those at the physical invulnerability realm, the most obvious difference was that their explosive power was more than a level higher. Unfortunately, even if Chu Xiu had not cultivated his essence, qi, and spirit to the level of unification, his explosive power was still astonishing. Back in the Guanzhong torture room, even Wei Hanshan, who was an inspector and was in his prime, was no match for Chu Xiu, let alone the old man from the Divine Force sect. His strength was even weaker than Wei Hanshan's. Therefore, the old man from the Divine Force sect already felt that he was no match for Chu Xiu's powerful Devil Qi blade aura. The old man from the Divine Force sect was fighting desperately to stop Chu Xiu so that Yan Tingting could escape. In fact, he was already prepared to die. This was Eastern Qi. Before this, they thought that no one would come to help Chu Xiu. Now that they were in a desperate situation, they realized that no one would come to help them either. Previously, when Chu Xiu killed another warrior at the 3-flower realm of converging one's essence with his blade, he had completely destroyed their courage. Even if they all attacked together, they would still be no match for Chu Xiu. Reality had proven all of this. However, even though he knew that he was courting death, the old man from the Divine Force sect did not want to escape. It was not because he was so loyal to the Divine Force sect and Yan Huainan that he could sacrifice his life for Yan Tingting. It was because his children were also cultivating in the Divine Force sect. Yan Huainan had sent him to protect his daughter precisely because he was experienced in the martial world. In the end, Yan Tingting had met with a mishap because of him. Regardless of whether it was because of him or not, he would be severely punished, and it would even implicate his descendants in the sect. Therefore, it was better to fight to the death here and let Yan Tingting escape. That way, Yan Huainan would at least remember his contribution and treat his children well. With that thought in mind, the old man from the Divine Force sect did not care about anything else. He began to burn the little blood he had left and began to fight with Chu Xiu. However, right at this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly retreated. He formed a seal with one hand, and the surging devil qi was completely suppressed by him. This caused the eyes of the divine martial sect's elder to brighten. He knew that it was impossible for this secret method to maintain such a powerful force all the time. Now it seemed that the secret method's time limit was up. If it continued to be used, it might even cause a certain backlash. At this time, it was the time when Chu Xiu was at his weakest. As expected, after Chu Xiu suppressed the power of the 3 cuts of Avisnaraka in his body, his face even turned a little pale. Previously, Chu Xiu had used the 2nd cut of the 3 cuts of Avisnaraka many times. After using it, he would immediately suppress the devil qi. Therefore, apart from the first time, Chu Xiu had almost never suffered from a backlash. This time, however, Chu Xiu had endured for such a long time without suppressing the demonic aura. Instead, he had used the demonic aura to attack his enemies. Although it was very powerful, the consumption was also abnormally intense. To be precise, this was not a consumption of his true energy or inner force, but a consumption of his mind. However, in the eyes of the old man from the Divine Force sect, Chu Xiu had consumed too much energy. This was also his only chance. In an instant, a dazzling light erupted from the spear in the old man's hand. It was as scorching and resplendent as a blazing sun, but there was a trace of blood mixed within it. It was the power brought about by the burning of his vital energy. The spear was like a dragon, a rainbow piercing the sun. This spear thrust condensed the strongest power of the old man from the Divine Force sect. The burning power of vital qi even had a part of the effect of destroying the devil. Although it was not as good as a Buddhist cultivation method, it could still restrain a martial artist like Chu Xiu who had cultivated in devil arts. However, at this time, Chu Xiu, who bore the brunt of the attack, revealed a mocking smile. When the Divine Force sect's old man's spear fell, Chu Xiu's hand formed the great Vajra-wheel seal. The Buddha's light that bloomed was even more dazzling than the old man's spear. Who said that he only knew devil arts? This old man from the Divine Force sect probably didn't even have basic information about him before coming to seek revenge. Wasn't he just courting death? Under the powerful great Vajra-wheel seal, the sound of shattering astral energy rang out. The spear in the old man's hand was also a 4th revolution precious weapon. However, it was directly shattered by Chu Xiu's great Vajra-wheel seal. The old man from the Divine Force sect was also sent flying more than 10 steps by Chu Xiu. In the end, he couldn't hold on any longer. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned deathly pale. Before, Chu Xiu's pale face was only because he had consumed too much of his vital qi. Now, the Divine Force sect's old man's face was pale because he was about to run out of energy. "Miss, hurry up and leave." The old man from the Divine Force sect looked at Yen Tingting, who still hadn't left. His eyes were filled with despair, but he couldn't persuade Yen Tingting anymore. His desperate attack had been broken by Chu Xiu, and he was severely injured by the great Vajra-wheel seal. At his age, he couldn't hold on any longer. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man from the Divine Force sect fell to the ground with a loud thud. The crowd immediately went into an uproar. 2 3-flower realm warriors, as well as several inner and outer invulnerability realm warriors, were killed and seriously injured by Chu Xiu in the blink of an eye. They couldn't even find a word to describe his strength other than terrifying. Meanwhile, in the field, after dealing with the 2 3-flower realm warriors, Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and revealed a hint of murderous intent as he walked toward Yen Tingting. In fact, Chu Xiu didn't like to kill women. After all, he was a man, and it was somewhat degrading for him to always kill women. However, the premise was that the other party didn't provoke him and didn't affect his interests. Otherwise, if Chu Xiu wanted to kill them, he wouldn't care about men or women. He only cared about the living and the dead. He killed Yu Luchuan. It didn't matter if Yen Tingting hated him or resented him. However, she now hated Chu Xiu to the extreme. As long as there was a chance, Chu Xiu was sure that this woman would definitely kill him. Therefore, if he let her live, countless troubles would be waiting for Chu Xiu. It was better to kill her now and put an end to it. As for the Divine Force sect, Chu Xiu really didn't believe that Yen Huainan would dare to go to the Guanzhong torture room and ask for Guanxiu. Whether it was in terms of status or strength, the Guanzhong torture room far surpassed the Divine Force sect. Most importantly, this was the style of the Guanzhong torture room. If you don't provoke me, I won't provoke you. The Guanzhong torture room never took the initiative to cause trouble, but they were never afraid of it. The few innate stage warriors guarding in front of Yan Tingting saw Chu Xiu walking over. They weren't as useless as running away in fear, but they still said in a slightly trembling voice, "Don't come over." "Chu Xiu, are you crazy? Do you know that if you kill the young lady, you will never rest until the Divine Force sect is dead?" Chu Xiu held his saber and said indifferently, "Not rest until the Divine Force sect is dead? If I don't kill her, she will definitely continue to create all kinds of trouble to deal with me. At that time, the Divine Force sect and I will also not rest until the Divine Force sect is dead. Therefore, why don't I finish her off earlier? So, please go to hell." However, at this moment, Yan Tingting suddenly raised her head and shouted to the surrounding warriors who were watching the show, "I will marry whoever kills him." As soon as she said this, everyone present was in an uproar. This young lady of the Divine Force sect was probably mad with anger. How could she say such words? However, Yan Tingting said with hatred in her hoarse voice, "I swear by the Divine Force sect's fortune that if anyone can kill Chu Xiu, I will marry him today. Everyone here can be a witness." Hearing Yan Tingting use the Divine Force sect to swear, everyone present couldn't help but change their expressions. What Yan Tingting said should be true. Her reputation wasn't worth much, but the Divine Force sect was one of the 7 sects and 8 schools. As Yan Huainan's daughter, she used the Divine Force sect's fortune to swear. This couldn't be false. Hearing this, there were many people who were tempted. Although they knew that Yan Tingting was using her marriage as the price to kill Chu Xiu purely out of hatred, they didn't like Yan Tingting because of love or anything like that, but because of Yan Tingting's identity. She was the young lady of the Divine Force sect. Moreover, Yan Tingting's appearance wasn't bad. Those disciples of the big sects might not like her, but some rogue cultivators or warriors from small sects were tempted. However, although they were tempted, no one made a move. It wasn't that Yan Tingting wasn't attractive enough, but Chu Xiu's power just now was too shocking, and it scared them. He had killed 2 3-flower realm martial artists in a row. Even if they were old, they were still genuine 3-flower realm martial artists. Moreover, the other inner and physical invulnerability realm martial artists were no match for him. Becoming the son-in-law of the Divine Force sect was very attractive, but the premise was that one had to weigh one's capabilities. Seeing that everyone present was scared by Chu Xiu's power and didn't dare to make a move, Yan Tingting shouted at them, "What are you afraid of? No matter how strong Chu Xiu is, he is only in the physical invulnerability realm. Look at his face. Just now, the people of the Divine Force sect used up most of his inner force. There are so many of you, and you still don't dare to make a move?" Seeing that everyone was still hesitating, Yan Tingting gritted her teeth and said, "I'm my father's only daughter, and the Divine Force sect doesn't have any outstanding disciples in this generation. Whoever marries me will receive all the resources and support of the Divine Force sect, and he will be the next sect master of the Divine Force sect." As soon as these words came out, the innate realm warriors who were protecting Yan Tingting were shocked. The young lady had gone crazy. For the sake of revenge, she didn't care about anything else. How could she make such a promise? Although Yan Huainan's words carried weight in the Divine Force sect, the Divine Force sect was still a sect, not an aristocratic family. The next sect master looked at strength, not relationship with Yan Huainan. Now that Yan Tingting made such a promise here, if word got back to the Divine Force sect, most of the disciples in the Divine Force sect would be dissatisfied. It might even cause unrest in the sect. Chapter 227. The disciples of the Divine Force sect had guessed correctly. Yan Tingting was indeed a little crazy. For the sake of revenge, she did not care about anything else. In fact, before she met Chu Xiu, her emotions had almost stabilized. After all, Yu Luchuan had been dead for such a long time. When she found a new lover, she might forget about this matter. However, who would have thought that she would meet Chu Xiu here, causing her hatred to surge? She thought that she could kill Chu Xiu, but in the end her subordinates were killed by Chu Xiu. In such a desperate situation, she, who was originally extreme, went completely crazy and did not care about anything else. Yan Tingting's crazy actions did attract the surrounding warriors, especially those who were itinerant cultivators and those from small sections. If they married Yan Tingting, they would be the successors of the Divine Force sect. That was the Divine Force sect, one of the 7 sects and 8 schools. Although some of the people present were not from the northern Yan kingdom, they had some understanding of the Divine Force sect and knew the situation of the Divine Force sect. In the entire Divine Force sect, Yan Huainan's words carried enormous weight. The Divine Force sect had risen because of Yan Huainan. The next generation did not have any outstanding figures. Even for this God Weapon conference, except for Yan Tingting, who came to relax, the Divine Force sect did not send anyone else. Since this was the case, Yan Tingting's words were not deceiving them. It was really possible. The crowd looked at the slightly pale Chu Xiu and gradually gathered around him. Most of them were itinerant cultivators and warriors from small sections. Their eyes flashed with an inexplicable light. They had seen Chu Xiu's strength. It would be very terrifying to fight with such a terrifying person. Moreover, there was the Guanzhong torture room behind him. If they touched Chu Xiu, they would offend the Guanzhong torture room. These were all risks. However, the problem was that under the temptation of becoming Yan Huainan's son-in-law and the successor of the Divine Force sect, these risks could be offset. Previously, they did not make a move because the temptation was not enough. But now, the benefits were enough, to the point that they did not even dare to dream about it. In the face of such temptation, not to mention the risk, they were even willing to gamble with their lives. Moreover, there were people like Xie Xiaolu who also saw through Chu Xiu's depth. The power that Chu Xiu displayed just now was indeed astonishing, but it was impossible for him to have the strength to kill a 3-flower realm cultivator as easily as killing a chicken. Even the little celestial master, Zhang Qingzhen of Longhu Mountain, was not as terrifying as Chu Xiu when he was in the physical invulnerability realm. He could easily kill a 3-flower realm martial artist with a single slash. That was why Chu Xiu's first slash was the ultimate attack with all his strength. Such an attack could not be used casually. Looking at the people present, Chu Xiu frowned slightly. It was indeed troublesome to offend a woman. There were 3 types of people in the martial world that should not be messed with: children, the elderly, and women. When a child walked the martial world, one would never know whether the other party was an old monster who had regained his youth after cultivating a secret technique, or if there was an old monster standing behind the child. As for the elderly, the young were afraid of the strong. Those old people in the martial world represented the decline of their qi and blood, which represented the decline of their combat power. Although they looked weak, in reality, such old people were the most terrifying. Because they were already at the end of their lifespan, they could fight to the death with no qualms. On the other hand, one still had a good time and a bright future. No matter how one looked at it, one would be at a disadvantage. As for women, there was no need to say much. As women, they were the best weapons and could bring you a lot of trouble. For example, Chu Xiu was now. After looking around, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a hint of coldness. He said, "Blinded by greed, all of you want to be Yan Huainan's son-in-law? Let me give you a word of advice. In the end, if you can't be Yan Huainan's son-in-law, I'm afraid you will go to hell and become the son-in-law of the king of hell." With the temptation of benefits in front of them, Chu Xiu's words did not scare these people away. Among them, a handsome man in a blue shirt, holding a folding fan, and dressed like a young master of an aristocratic family stood out and sneered. "Blinded by greed? You actually wanted to kill a woman like Miss Yan. You're simply deranged." Moreover, the person I, Zhu Wuhe, respect the sect master of Yan Huainan the most in my life. If you want to touch Miss Yan, you will have to go through me first. The man who spoke was Zhu Wuhe, the eldest son of the Zhu family, a small family in eastern Qi. His strength was not bad, and he had reached the physical invulnerability realm at a young age. His father, the head of the Zhu family, was also in the physical invulnerability realm. It could be said that the small Zhu family could no longer accommodate him, and they could not provide him with enough cultivation resources. Zhu Wuhe did not come to the God Weapon Conference to have any illusions about the God Weapon. He just wanted to make friends with some disciples of the big sections. He did not expect to encounter such a good thing. He thought highly of himself, and he even believed that if he had been born in one of the 9 big aristocratic families instead of a small family like the Zhu family, his current achievements would not be any worse than those elites on the Longhu list. If he could really kill Chu Xiu this time, marry Yan Tingting, become Yan Huainan's son-in-law, and obtain the support of the entire Divine Force sect, he would reach the peak of his life. The other warriors cast a disdainful glance at Zhu Wuhe. If he wanted to fight, then fight. Why did he have to use such high-sounding reasons? He had never left Eastern Qi in his life, so why did he have to talk about admiring Yan Huainan? However, since Zhu Wuhe was the first to stand out, there was a second one. An ugly, brawny man in his 30s, holding a giant axe, also stood out and said with a laugh, "I have never liked a woman in my life. Now that I have the opportunity to become the son-in-law of the Divine Force sect master, I would like to give it a try." Seeing that this brawny man also wanted to join in the fun, the crowd instantly felt a chill run down their spines. This brawny man was Evil Tiger Pengzi, a well-known rogue cultivator of this generation in Changlin County. He used to be a bandit in his early years, and he even built a small mountain stronghold of his own, but it was annihilated by the soldiers. Later on, although he no longer made a living as a bandit, it was still not a good thing. He even worked as a hanger-on for others, and he ended up betraying his master. Moreover, this Pengzue was nearly 3 meters tall, with dark skin and an ugly appearance. It was unbearable to look at him standing next to a petite woman like Yan Tingting. Pengzue, with your conduct, even if you really went to the Divine Force sect, I'm afraid you would be kicked out by Sect Master Yan. Why don't you take a good look at yourself in the mirror? Do you think you are worthy of marrying Miss Yan with that appearance of yours? A handsome and elegant man with 2 swords on his back, wearing a tight-fitting warrior suit, walked out from the crowd with a proud expression on his face. It's Gong Sun Lu, the twin Scarlet Swords. Ranked 32nd on the Dragon and Tiger list, Gong Sun Lu. The crowd immediately went into an uproar. This was the first time a warrior on the Dragon and Tiger list stood out to attack Chu Xiu. At the back of the crowd, Mo Tianlin frowned and said, "Why is this shit-stirrer on the Dragon and Tiger list here?" Xie Xiao Lu curled his lips and said, "Watch your words. If he is a shit-stirrer, then what are we?" Although this Gong Sun Lu was also a warrior on the Dragon and Tiger list, his conduct was somewhat despicable. The Dragon and Tiger list was ranked according to fame and strength. This Gong Sun Lu had some strength, but he was a rogue cultivator, and his fame was not outstanding. It would be very difficult for him to step into the top 50 of the Dragon and Tiger list with his meager strength. Therefore, this Gong Sun Lu came up with an idea, and that was to specifically challenge those who were not as strong as him, but were very famous and ranked ahead of him on the list. Furthermore, they were rogue cultivators. Before the battle, he would collect detailed information about them, and only when he was 99% sure of winning would he dare to make a move. In the martial world, the young heroes who could be ranked on the Dragon and Tiger list were all challenging warriors who were stronger than them. In the end, this Gong Sun Lu was just doing it for the sake of getting on the list. Sometimes, he would even pick on his opponents when they were weak, just to get on the Dragon and Tiger list. This was simply shameless, which was why he was called the shit-stirrer of the Dragon and Tiger list. Normal warriors might respect him because of his ranking on the Dragon and Tiger list, but in the eyes of Mo Tianlin and the others, this guy was just a clown. Although this Gong Sun Lu looked young, he was actually more than 30 years old. In a few years, he would be completely kicked out of the Dragon and Tiger list by the wind-sweeping tower. Therefore, he came to the God Weapon Conference this time to gain a last bit of fame, but he did not expect to encounter such a good thing. If he could really kill Chu Xiu, with his appearance and ranking on the Dragon and Tiger list, Yan Huainan might even be eager to make him his son-in-law. Gong Sun Lu and the other 2 were considered to be somewhat famous warriors in Eastern Qi. Since they stood up and were ready to attack Chu Xiu, almost 100 warriors among the surrounding onlookers stood up and were eager to give it a try. Among these warriors, there were both inner and physical invulnerability warriors. As for warriors below the inner invulnerability realm, they did not dare to make a move. The warriors of the inner strong realm might still have the mentality of taking advantage of the situation, but the warriors of the innate realm did not even have the guts to do so. In a fight of this level, they could easily be killed if they were not careful. The aura of more than 100 people gathered together was extremely powerful. Even if Chu Xiu had gained the upper hand by showing off his strength, no matter how amazing the aura he created was, it would be useless in the face of more than 100 people. Sometimes, people would follow blindly. If you were alone, you would be afraid, but if you had more than 100 companions around you, your fear would be distributed to these people, and you would become extremely brave. Standing at the back of the crowd, Mo Tianlin lowered his head and transmitted his voice to Xie Xiaolu. Do we need help? After all, he is a friend of your friend. Xie Xiaolu said lightly, a friend of a friend does not mean that he is a friend of mine. After all, we have only known each other for a few hours. I am not so righteous that I would risk my life for him. There are more than 100 people here, and it will be very tragic if I provoke them all. However, Brother Lu has mentioned him to me many times. With this important relationship, I will naturally not watch Chu Xiu be killed. There is no need to add flowers to brocade. If he really cannot hold on, I will lend a helping hand and save his life. What do you think? Emonenlin also smiled and said, just like you. Chapter 228. There were many righteous people in Jianghu, and there were also many realistic people. Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin weren't righteous, but they weren't realistic people either. Xie Xiaolu was willing to become friends with Chu Xiu because of Lu Fengxian, while Mo Tianlin became friends with Chu Xiu because he was curious. In addition, he was a very amiable person who liked to make friends with others. They had only known Chu Xiu for half a day. Asking them to fight to the death for Chu Xiu was something they couldn't do. Just like what Xie Xiaolu said, the most they could do was to help Chu Xiu in his hour of need and save his life. That was already being extremely benevolent. This wasn't because they were indifferent, but because they lived in Jianghu, most people could only do this. Just like Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin, they had been good friends for many years. But even so, they had their own forces behind them, so they couldn't really fight to the death for each other. At most, they could only do their best. Moreover, the two of them wanted to see Chu Xiu's true strength. For martial artists like Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin, those who could become friends with them were either people of similar status or stronger than them. Ordinary people didn't even have the qualifications to be friends with them. At this time, everyone was looking at Chu Xiu eagerly. The pressure even made Chu Xiu feel heavy. At the same time, he also felt that it was ridiculous. After stepping into Jianghu for so long, because he was familiar with the storyline, Chu Xiu was able to avoid many risks most of the time. Even when he faced the Heaven Sin branch leader last time, Chu Xiu used the storyline to lure the people of White Tiger Hall out of danger. But this time, it was purely an accident. He did not expect Yan Tingting to appear here, nor did he expect Yan Tingting's hatred for him to be so deep that she would not hesitate to pay the price of her own life to kill him. In the face of such a dangerous situation, Chu Xiu heaved a sigh of relief. The external pressure was heavy, but his heart was incomparably calm. It was a kind of calm that could be described as crazy. Chu Xiu from his previous life had always been the main character in the fusion of the memories of the two lives. However, in this life, Chu Xiu had been infected with a crazy and tyrannical personality in the Chu family's Nanshan mining area. It had been a long time since Chu Xiu had this kind of personality, but under this kind of external pressure, the tyrannical madness hidden in the deepest part of his soul was quietly released. Raising his head, Chu Xiu smiled at the people around him. Do you all want to exchange my life for your future? Bring it on. Everyone present suddenly frowned. If an ordinary person was surrounded by hundreds of martial artists of the same level, the only thing they would think of was to kill their way out and escape. Not like Chu Xiu, who dared to take the initiative to provoke them. This was simply courting death. However, the aftermath of Chu Xiu killing a 3-flower realm martial artist with a single slash still lingered in the air. although everyone knew that it was only because of Chu Xiu's explosive power and not because of his true strength. Who would dare to bet against him? The first person to attack could easily be used as cannon fodder to die, and then the people behind him could take advantage of it. Seeing that no one dared to move, the corner of Chu Xiu's mouth showed a crazy smile. Since none of you are coming, well, I'll go first. As soon as his voice fell, Chu Xiu took a step forward and pinched the inner binding seal. In an instant, his speed exploded to the extreme. The red sleeve blade in his hand was as red as blood. It had already devoured countless lives, and it was mixed with a dense aura of death. Chu Xiu's blood-refining divine shield was unleashed to the extreme. In an instant, the sky was filled with blood-red blade shadows, and they directly rushed toward the evil tiger, Peng Zui. Although the power of this blade was not as strong as the power of the Avici Dao's 3 blades that Chu Xiu had directly burst out, it was still shocking enough. At the very least, Peng Zui, who bore the brunt of the attack, even wanted to curse. There were hundreds of people present, surrounding Chu Xiu. There were people in all directions. Why did Chu Xiu have to target him? So many people thought that he was easy to bully? However, under Chu Xiu's terrifyingly powerful blade aura, Peng Zui didn't have the time to complain at all. He roared furiously, and a pitch-black aura burst out from the giant axe in his hand. As the axe chopped down, a violent sonic boom immediately erupted. The aura even faintly condensed into the shape of a black tiger, appearing abnormally ferocious. Peng Zui was able to make a name for himself in the land of Eastern Qi, and even survive the strangulation of the Eastern Qi imperial court, which was enough to prove his strength. He hadn't learned any particularly profound martial skills, but he was exceptionally talented. His own strength and stellar energy were shockingly strong, and there were very few people in the same cultivation level who could block 3 of his axes. But at this time, facing Chu Xiu, his powerful axe with the roar of a black tiger was shattered inch by the blood-refined divine gang. The slender red sleeve blade collided with the giant axe in his hand, which was half the height of a person, but it directly chopped Peng Zui's giant axe into pieces. With a loud bang of gang qi, Peng Zui's body flew out directly. He instantly spat out blood, and a look of horror appeared in his eyes. What he was most proficient in was power. In the end, his power couldn't even withstand a single blow from Chu Xiu. And it was not over yet. Chu Xiu's figure rushed towards him again. At this time, Peng Zui also hurriedly shouted, "Don't just watch. Attack together. If you continue to hesitate, not to mention 100 people, even 1,000 people will be defeated by Chu Xiu one by one." Peng Zui's words did awaken many people. In a one-on-one fight, even a warrior with a little fame like Peng Zui could not withstand a few moves from Chu Xiu. If they ignored Chu Xiu and watched him attack, then sooner or later they would be defeated by Chu Xiu one by one. Therefore, more than a dozen physical invulnerability realm warriors beside Peng Zui hurriedly took action and blocked in front of Chu Xiu. Countless sword qi and gang qi broke out, and finally blocked Chu Xiu's blade momentum. The power of the blood-refined divine gang was indeed strong, and Chu Xiu's blade momentum was indeed amazing. But now more than a dozen people attacked together, and the pressure was evenly distributed, so they successfully blocked Chu Xiu's attack. But at this moment, a golden Buddha's light suddenly burst out. Under the great Vajra wheel seal, the incomparably fierce power directly broke through all obstacles, and several people in front of him were directly blown away while vomiting blood. Then, it directly rushed towards Peng Zui. But just after Chu Xiu performed the great Vajra wheel seal, Zhu Wuha appeared behind Chu Xiu unknowingly. On the folding fan in his hand, there were several bone-piercing nails with a trace of pitch-black gang qi attacking Chu Xiu's major acupoints. The pitch-black gang qi actually had the effect of corroding the opponent's gang qi. No matter how strong Chu Xiu's protective gang qi was, 2 bone-piercing nails directly hit 2 major acupoints on Chu Xiu's back. Seeing this, Zhu Wuha's eyes showed a touch of joy. Similarly, he directly blasted a palm towards Chu Xiu's back. There was a trace of evil qi mixed in the palm force, which was obviously not a good method. On the other side, Peng Zui also breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this. Just now, he was still fantasizing about killing Chu Xiu and marrying Yan Tingting. Then he, a vulgar Jianghu person with a bandit background, could also become a disciple of a big sect. But Chu Xiu's saber made him recognize the cruel reality. If someone was killed by Zhu Wuhe, then so be it. At least he could still keep his life, right? But just when everyone thought that Chu Xiu would definitely be killed by Zhu Wuhe's sneak attack, Chu Xiu directly turned around without warning. The bone-piercing nails that hit 2 major acupoints in his body were directly blasted away by the internal force and did not have the slightest effect at all. Zhu Wuhe met Chu Xiu's gaze and saw the ruthless madness without the slightest emotion, which made Zhu Wuhe's heart suddenly skip a beat. But the next moment, Chu Xiu's gaze had changed. It should be said that his eyes were once again covered by devil qi. In just a few minutes, Chu Xiu had already triggered the power of the Avici Dao's 3 sabers twice. However, this time, Chu Xiu didn't use his saber. Instead, he welcomed Zhu Wuhe's palm strike with his great violet sun palm. This time, with Chu Xiu's devil qi as the catalyst, the violet sun devil flame seemed to have gained fuel as it burned intensely. When the palm strike landed, Zhu Wuhe immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire arm turned purple. The scorching violet sun devil flame burned within his body, causing him to almost scream out in pain. At this time, Chu Xiu's right hand was already holding the red sleeve saber, which made Zhu Wuhe retreat quickly. But unexpectedly, Chu Xiu did not attack Zhu Wuhe at all, but directly turned around and attacked Peng Zui again. No one could resist the 3 sabers of Avici Dao. When the red sleeve saber in Chu Xiu's hand, which was wrapped in devil qi, was lifted, the people in front of him either became corpses, or were directly beheaded, cut in half, and became incomplete corpses. Looking at the oncoming devil saber, Peng Zui's eyes showed endless horror. Even when his stronghold was annihilated by the military experts of Eastern Qi, he had not been so close to death. With a loud shout, Gang Qi burst out of Peng Zui's body, and a punch fell. The black tiger fist turned into a 1-meter-long Gang Qi phantom, trying to stop Chu Xiu, but the result was that under the terrible devil qi, it was shattered. When he came to his senses, he could not speak, because at this time, Peng Zui had already seen his headless corpse. Surrounded by the monstrous devil qi, Chu Xiu stood with the saber under the gaze of countless people, and at his feet was Peng Zui's headless corpse. Looking at Zhu Wuhe, Chu Xiu's eyes were wrapped in devil qi, and the people could not see his eyes, but could see a trace of a crazy smile at the corner of his mouth. Pointing to Zhu Wuhe, Chu Xiu said in a voice without the slightest emotion, "This is the first, and you are the second." Hearing this, Zhu Wuhe, who was expelling the purple sun devil flame, suddenly shivered, and shouted in his heart, "Madman!" Chapter 229. From Zhu Wuhe's point of view, Chu Xiu was a madman. Chu Xiu's palm just now had already seriously injured him. Normally speaking, Chu Xiu should have killed him first, and then Peng Zui. However, Chu Xiu gave up on what was close at hand and sought what was far away, insisting on killing Peng Zui first, and now pointing at him to be the second. Chu Xiu's intentions were very clear. No matter how many people there were here, as long as they were targeted by him, no one would be able to leave alive. This was a kind of crazy attitude, not caring about gains and losses, only wanting to kill. At this time, Zhu Wuhe, who was listed as the second target by Chu Xiu, looked at Chu Xiu's eyes that were covered by demonic energy, and suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. The martial artists who did not participate in this matter and the spectators all revealed a look of surprise. Whether it was Chu Xiu's crazy attitude or his ability to recklessly kill his opponents in the midst of 100 people, they all left a very deep impression on them. Mo Tianlin's complexion was dignified as he looked at Xie Xiaolu and said, "If you were Chu Xiu, would you be able to do this?" After being silent for a long time, Xie Xiaolu's eyes revealed a touch of complexity, and he said, "Do fart." At this time, shouldn't a normal person choose to kill his way out? This guy actually took the initiative to fight those people. He's simply a madman. Mo Tianlin's eyes revealed a touch of surprise, and he said, "What's wrong with being a madman?" A senior of my Mo family once said, There are no madmen in this world, only the strong and the weak. If you don't go crazy, you won't survive. When a madman stands at the peak, he is no longer a madman, but a strong person that everyone worships. Now I am more and more interested in this Chu Xiu. 1 against 100, if he doesn't die, this God Weapon Convention will be the place where he will make a name for himself. As a disciple of an aristocratic family, it was inevitable that there would be some utilitarianism in making friends. Mo Tianlin knew this, but he did not reject it. Based on the strength that Chu Xiu had displayed, he was ready to lend a helping hand. When Taoist Xian Cheng saw Chu Xiu's reaction, he suddenly frowned and mumbled, taking the initiative to draw the inner demon into his body. Was he crazy? No, this inner demon has always existed in his body. He is just releasing it naturally. This person was born with a demonic nature in his body. The sequelae of transmigration caused Chu Xiu to hide 2 personalities in his body. Simply put, his condition was the legendary schizophrenia. From Taoist Xiancheng's point of view, Chu Xiu was a person with a hidden demonic nature. If he were to enter the demonic path, he would not be an elite on the Longhu list, but a ferocious new talent in the demonic path. The demonic path was not scary. What was scary was that some people in the demonic path did not even think of themselves as such. From Taoist Xiancheng's point of view, Chu Xiu was such a person. The demonic nature in his body did not reject him at all. That was why he could use the secret technique to enter the demonic path twice in a row and still control the power in his body, preventing it from backfiring. Taoist Xiancheng shook his head. If this person did not die, he might become a great demon who would bring disaster to the world in the future. However, he could not stop him. Taoist Xiancheng had already sworn that he would never fight again in this life, so this matter was not something he could interfere with. With a sigh, Taoist Xiancheng turned around and said to the few little Taoist children beside him, "Let's go. It's time for us to move." As he spoke, he waved his hand and led the few little Taoist children into the Taoist temple. However, the strange thing was that some of the warriors who were very close to Taoist Xiancheng did not notice his actions at all. They did not even notice that Taoist Xiancheng had disappeared. At this moment, Chu Xiu flashed a sinister smile at Zhu Wuhe before charging straight at him. Seeing this, Zhu Wuhe's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly retreated and shouted, "Guards! Everyone attack together. Don't let Chu Xiu defeat us one by one." When the warriors around heard Zhu Wuhe's shout, not only did they not attack, but they also avoided Chu Xiu. No one dared to stop him. It was not that they were idiots who did not know the principle of defeating them one by one, but they did not want to die. Everyone could see that Chu Xiu was obviously not in the right state of mind. He would kill anyone he targeted and kill anyone who stood in his way, just like how he killed Peng Zue just now. Now that he had targeted Zhu Wuhe, it proved that they were safe for the time being. As for how long Zhu Wuhe could last, it was none of their business. People always wanted to get lucky. Now that Chu Xiu was in the limelight, no one wanted to be the first to rush to their deaths. Anyway, as long as Chu Xiu did not target them, they would not make the first move. Under Chu Xiu's extremely violent saber momentum, Zhu Wuhe was seriously injured by the saber aura after a few moves. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. This kind of gap in strength could not be made up for by any martial arts skill. At this time, Gong Sun Lu, who was watching the battle from the side, frowned. He was insidious and cunning, and was best at currying favor. Otherwise, he would not have a place on the Longhu list. Originally, with Gong Sun Lu's character, he was ready to take advantage of the situation at the last moment. However, it was obvious that he was not the only one who thought so. 1 against 100, this was simply a fantasy. The opponent would almost certainly die. But now, although Chu Xiu was fighting 1 against 100, the 100 people he was fighting had their own thoughts. 100 people had 100 thoughts. If this continued, no one would be able to kill Chu Xiu. Therefore, Gong Sun Lu could not calm down at this time. He directly stood up and shouted, "Everyone, if you continue to hold back, I am afraid that you will be defeated by Chu Xiu one by one. At that time, no one will be able to kill Chu Xiu. If you trust me, then listen to my command. More than 10 warriors who have practiced horizontal martial arts will stand up to block Chu Xiu. Warriors who are good at using hidden weapons, long arrows, and other weapons will attack from a distance. The rest of the warriors will coordinate with each other. Only then will we be able to kill this Chu Xiu. With that, Gong Sun Lu pulled out the 2 precious weapons on his back, one red and one black, and rushed towards Chu Xiu. People tend to follow blindly. If there was no one to go first, then no one else would. Although Gong Sun Lu's character was not very good, he was still famous and strong. Therefore, as soon as he spoke, many warriors were willing to listen to his command. They formed a formation and attacked Chu Xiu together. Under Gong Sun Lu's lead, more than 10 cultivators who cultivated in body-tempering cultivation techniques rushed forward. They burst forth with astral energy to block Chu Xiu's attack. With a series of explosions of astral energy, more than 10 people attacked together. Only then did they barely manage to block Chu Xiu's powerful saber attack. At the same time, there was a sound of air breaking. In the distance, some hidden weapons attacked Chu Xiu. Among them were several arrows with sharp gang qi. There were many warriors who used hidden weapons in the Jianghu, but there were only a few who used bows and arrows. Most of them were warriors who came from the imperial court and were used to using bows and arrows as weapons. The powerful bows and arrows and the sinister hidden weapons attacked together. Chu Xiu frowned. His blood-refined divine power burst out, cutting down the arrows one by one. As for the remaining hidden weapons, he also burst out his gang qi to block them. In any case, with the great acupoint shifting technique, even if Chu Xiu was hit by the hidden weapons, as long as there was no poison on them, Chu Xiu was not afraid at all. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Gong Sun Lu also led his men to attack. The 2 swords in Gong Sun Lu's hands were both precious weapons. One carried a scorching hot gang qi, while the other carried a sinister qi. However, Gong Sun Lu was able to use 2 different types of stellar energy and 2 different types of sword techniques very naturally. One yin and one yang, bringing with them 2 auras, slashed towards Chu Xiu. The other warriors also surged their gang qi and attacked Chu Xiu. The combined attack of more than a dozen people was very powerful. If it was anyone else, they would have been torn to pieces by this powerful gang qi. But at this moment, Chu Xiu formed a seal with both hands. He mobilized all the gang qi around him, and the aura around him suddenly became very stable, unmoving like a mountain. Formula of Lin, Din. With a loud bang, endless gang qi exploded. Chu Xiu's figure quickly retreated, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Although Chu Xiu had once used Duguin to block the divine black spatial claw from the heavenly Sin branch leader, now that there were more than a dozen people attacking together, Dugu Yin's defensive gang qi attack was more prominent. The recoil of his own power was still borne by Chu Xiu. So after using Dugu Yin to block the attack, Chu Xiu's internal organs were shaken and he suffered minor injuries. He formed the inner lion seal. While suppressing his internal injuries, Chu Xiu also suppressed the devil qi drawn by the 3 blades of Avici. He had drawn the devil qi into his body twice in a row without directly suppressing the recoil. His body was starting to feel a little overwhelmed. At this time, when Gong Sun Lu and the others saw that Chu Xiu had been beaten back by them, they couldn't help but show excitement in their eyes. Previously, Chu Xiu was so strong that he could kill anyone who stood in his way. If Buddha stood in his way, he would kill Buddha. Everyone was terrified. But now, Chu Xiu was seriously injured under their siege. This proved that Chu Xiu was not unbeatable. They still had a chance. So this time, they didn't need Gong Sun Lu's command. They directly swarmed forward and attacked Chu Xiu. Gong Sun Lu sneered when he saw this. He was not in a hurry. When these people had almost exhausted Chu Xiu's strength, it would be the best time for him to make his move. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Chu Xiu looked at the people rushing towards him and smiled. "You can't wait to die? Well, I'll fulfill your wish." Before his voice died away, Chu Xiu's hand had already formed a fist seal. When this seal fell, the people around him felt that their bodies were sealed in the surrounding space. The gang qi imprisoned their bodies, like a big net, making it impossible for them to break free. Formation word formula, Wisdom Fist Seal. Main space, sealed. Nets in all directions, heaven and earth are useless. Chu Xiu's figure moved and appeared in front of a martial artist. At the moment when the martial artist was imprisoned by the Gang Qi, he gently twisted his hand and the martial artist's head was abruptly removed. Blood gushed out like a fountain. He turned around and unsheathed the red sleeve blade. The blood god gang erupted. The two martial artists in front of Chu Xiu were directly cut in half at the waist, letting out miserable screams. Within the range of the Wisdom Fist Seal, Chu Xiu was like a poisonous spider that had laid an inescapable net, cold-blooded harvesting everyone's lives. Chapter 230. Chu Xiu was already very familiar with the first 6 seals of the fast and slow 9 words formula, but Chu Xiu had never used the last 3 seals. It was not that Chu Xiu did not want to use them, but the fast and slow 9 words formula itself was a kind of martial arts technique that consumed a lot of internal energy. The last few seals consumed too much internal energy, and they were all instantaneous bursts. If they were used rashly, it would cause great pressure on Chu Xiu's meridians, and if he was not careful, it would cause a backlash. At this moment, Chu Xiu could not care less about the backlash. He had mobilized all the Gang Qi in his body to the maximum. In his body, the glazed golden silk goo was attached to his heart, beating with the rhythm of Chu Xiu's heartbeat. Traces of golden power seeped into Chu Xiu's meridians. This was the power that belonged to the glazed golden silk goo. There was a reason why the glazed golden silk goo could be called a treasure in the past. Ordinary goo worms were evil and ruthless, belonging to the insidious category. However, the glazed golden silk goo was not that kind of insidious goo worm. Although it relied on the power of Chu Xiu's blood to grow and survive, at this critical moment, the glazed golden silk goo could also release its own power to complement Chu Xiu. The goo worm was attached to Chu Xiu's heart. This way, the two of them were symbiotic, and it was not a one-sided demand. At this time, under the powerful power of Chu Xiu's Wisdom Fist Seal that sealed the void, the first dozen warriors who attacked were all slaughtered by Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu's figure was also quickly charging towards Jianghu. Wherever he passed, no one dared to stop him. Previously, when they saw Chu Xiu vomiting blood from his injuries, they all thought that Chu Xiu was already in a desperate situation and had exhausted his limited abilities. Who would have thought that his sudden burst of power would take away more than a dozen lives? At this moment, everyone's heart was a little uncertain. Where exactly was Chu Xiu's limit? Although he seemed to have consumed a lot of energy, who dared to say that Chu Xiu did not have the strength to do it again? Gong Sun Lu was still shouting at the side. He wanted to gather people to stop Chu Xiu again, but this time, there was no one to deal with him. Looking at Chu Xiu's approaching figure, Zhu Wuha covered his wound and shouted in horror, "Don't kill me! I quit!" He was the only hope of the Zhu family, the only person qualified to step into the upper class of Jianghu. Even if he couldn't marry Yan Tingting, he had other ways to make a name for himself in the land of Eastern Qi. Why should he get involved in this mess? At this time, Zhu Wuha already regretted, but unfortunately, Chu Xiu would not give him the chance to regret. The crimson shadow of the knife shone in front of him. Even though the red sleeve knife had taken the lives of more than 10 people, there was still not a trace of blood on it. However, there was a strong smell of blood on the knife, which made people pale. Zhu Wuha roared. Ignoring his own injury, he wanted to burst out all the Gang Qi in his body to resist. But before he could do anything, Chu Xiu's figure had already swept past him. The crimson knife flashed, and Chu Xiu had already taken Zhu Wuha's head. Panting, Chu Xiu pointed at Gong Sun Lu and said in an extremely calm tone, "You are the third." When Chu Xiu looked at him with a calm but extremely crazy look, Gong Sun Lu suddenly shivered, and a chill rushed from the bottom of his heart to the top of his head. He looked around subconsciously. The other warriors were no longer as excited as before, nor were they still fantasizing about killing Chu Xiu, marrying Yan Tingting, becoming the heir of the Divine Force sect, and reaching the peak of their lives. Gong Sun Lu could only see fear in their eyes, endless fear. They had seen people who had killed more people than Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu's method of killing people one by one, coupled with his terrifying strength that seemed to be able to destroy everything, was so strong that it made them despair. As long as it was the person Chu Xiu wanted to kill, he could not escape, and they could not stop him. Otherwise, whoever stood in his way would die. Could be said that God would kill God, Buddha would kill Buddha. Under such terrifying strength, their counterattacks seemed so powerless. Even now, no one dared to take the initiative to step forward. If this went on, after Chu Xiu killed Gongsun Lu, who would be next? Themselves or others? Although the probability was only a few out of 10, as long as they were targeted by Chu Xiu, the death rate was 100%. Thinking of this, some people even retreated from the crowd in a panic and fled. Marrying a beauty like Yen Tingting was indeed very tempting, and becoming the heir of the Divine Force sect was even more tempting. Everyone understood the principle of seeking wealth amidst danger. But the problem was that facing Chu Xiu, it was no longer seeking wealth amidst danger, it was simply seeking wealth amidst death. Therefore, some of the timid people were scared by Chu Xiu and immediately fled the place after losing their greed. People tended to follow blindly, just like how they had participated in the siege against Chu Xiu. Clearly, when one person escaped, the others also wanted to escape. From one person, it became a few, and finally, it became a dozen, a few dozens. Seeing Chu Xiu's figure approaching, Gongsun Lu felt a little guilty. He knew his own strength. The other idiots were scared by Chu Xiu and did not even dare to fight. How could he fight when he was the only one left? Without saying a word, Gongsun Lu directly turned around and fled, and his speed was even faster than the others. Looking at Gongsun Lu's fleeing figure, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a hint of coldness. In fact, his current state was not too bad. Although Chu Xiu was still killing, whether it was drawing demonic energy into his body twice or using the wisdom fist seal that he had not fully grasped, Chu Xiu's backlash was very large. If not for the glass golden threads Gu's power to feed back to Chu Xiu probably would not have lasted until now. But now, Chu Xiu's will was still in an extreme state of madness. Since he said he would kill Gongsun Lu, then he must die. So at this moment, Chu Xiu directly formed the internal binding seal, and his figure broke through the wind. Between heaven and earth, he could move unhindered. The speed that the internal binding seal could unleash could be said to be the limit for short distances. Gongsun Lu did not run far before he felt a whistling gust of wind behind him. At the same time, he also felt the powerful aura qi that was stained with endless demonic energy descending on him. Gongsun Lu roared angrily, and the two swords in his hands danced. In an instant, the crimson longsword danced with flames, and the longsword with the evil aura burst out a aura qi that was not demonic energy, but a decaying aura. It fused with the flames. In an instant, the fierce and explosive sword aura seemed to be ignited with ghost fire, and a strange and scorching aura burst out, enveloping Chu Xiu. This underworld flaming sword of his was something he had figured out himself, and he had condensed two different sword moves together, causing its might to explode out several times. A rogue cultivator like him did not have a powerful inheritance, so he could only rely on this alternative method to improve the power of his martial arts. The strength of the underworld fire sword's aura could only be said to be ordinary, but it contained an extremely strong corrosive power. It actually corroded Chu Xiu's blood-refined divine aura completely. However, before he could catch his breath, he saw a golden Buddha's light burst out in front of him. The Vajra glared, suppressing the world and subduing the demon. The great Vajra will seal. With a loud bang, the long sword in Gongsun Lu's hand was directly knocked away. Even the web between his thumb and index finger was cracked by Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel seal, and blood flowed out. Seeing Chu Xiu appear in front of him, Gongsun Lu no longer had time to feel fear. He directly reached into his arms, wanting to take something. However, before he could do anything, Chu Xiu quickly formed a seal with his hand. As he tapped the seal with his fingers, there was a thunderous explosion. Fighting formula, Outer Lion Seal. The Outer Lion Seal, which was comparable to the Great Light Temple's 9 transformation lion roar, was displayed. The thunderous explosion seemed to ring in Gongsun Lu's ears, and it immediately stunned him. He even started bleeding from his orifices. When Gongsun Lu regained consciousness again, a dazzling golden fist seal appeared in front of him. It was another great Vajrawheel seal. Bang! There was a crisp explosion, and the blood mist in front of Chu Xiu dissipated. As Gongsun Lu's headless body fell to the ground, there was suddenly a dead silence. Only Chu Xiu's deep breathing could be heard. Those who didn't participate in this battle all stared at Chu Xiu with their mouths agape. 1 against 100? This was an almost impossible task, but Chu Xiu had actually done it. The God Weapon Convention had yet to begin, but they were almost certain that after this matter, Chu Xiu's ranking on the Longhu leaderboard would definitely rise by a few more places. Not to mention the top 15, it was even possible for him to enter the top 10. Mo Tianlin looked at Chu Xiu, and after a long while, he let out an unclear sigh. He secretly transmitted his voice to Xie Xiao Lu, who was beside him. What did I say? Only experts and madmen can do something like this. Just now, you said that Chu Xiu is a madman, but now, in the eyes of others, he is an expert. Xie Xiao Lu nodded with a complicated look in his eyes. He was also a proud person, and it was very difficult for ordinary martial artists of the same generation to convince him. In recent years, the only person who could convince him was Marquis Wen Lu Fengxian. But now, seeing Chu Xiu, he believed in Lu Fengxian's judgment of people. For Lu Fengxian to praise him so much, he was indeed not an ordinary person. If it were them in that situation just now, the only way out would be to fight a bloody path. Being able to escape in such a sorry state would already be considered lucky. Chu Xiu, on the other hand, did the exact opposite. He went on a killing spree as if he had gone mad, causing everyone to tremble in fear. He killed until no one dared to come and kill him. Don't look at how Chu Xiu looked like he was about to run out of strength. But based on Chu Xiu's performance just now, who could be sure that he did not have the strength to fight anymore? The terrifying thing about Chu Xiu was that others could not see through him at all. If anyone wanted to take advantage of him, they could only test him with their life. Chapter 231. In this battle, Chu Xiu had completely stabilized the situation by himself. However, at this moment, Bai Wuji, who was in the rear, had a strange look in his eyes. The others had been scared stiff by Chu Xiu. Even if they knew that they could marry Yan Tingting and become Yan Huainan's son-in-law by killing Chu Xiu, they still didn't dare to make a move. However, when Bai Wuji saw that Chu Xiu's aura had become sluggish and was no longer as powerful as before, he felt a little restless. In fact, Bai Wuji didn't have any interest in Yan Tingting. He was also a warrior from the northern Yan clan, so he naturally knew what kind of person she was. A strong man like him naturally didn't like a crafty and unruly woman like Yan Tingting. Moreover, in his opinion, this woman was completely crazy. She actually used herself and the divine martial sect as a reward to hire someone to kill Chu Xiu. If Yan Huainan knew about this, he would be furious. Moreover, as the most outstanding disciple of this generation in the northern floating snow city, he didn't care about the position of the successor of the divine martial sect. The northern floating snow city was much stronger than the divine martial sect. Frankly speaking, the grudge between Bai Wuji and Chu Xiu was just a fight for fame and fortune. Some people didn't care about fame and fortune, but some people couldn't let it go, and Bai Wuji was one of them. When he first met Chu Xiu was just a penniless rogue cultivator. Bai Wuji didn't care even if he took away the treasure in Liu Yang Mountain in front of him. However, in less than 2 years, Chu Xiu had completely surpassed him. Sooner or later, these things would be dug out by others. At that time, Bai Wuji would easily become a stepping stone for Chu Xiu's achievements on the Longhu list. However, Bai Wuji had no choice but to admit that just based on the might Chu Xiu displayed now, if they were to fight one-on-one, he wouldn't be a match for him. Even if he used the secret arts of the Drift Snow City, he didn't have much confidence in defeating Chu Xiu. However, Bai Wuji had never been a pedantic person. He had to be fair when fighting. It wasn't like he hadn't hit someone when they were down before. Therefore, after seeing Chu Xiu's attitude, Bai Wuji's eyes suddenly revealed a trace of killing intent. Finally, he made up his mind and said to Fang Huai and the other Northern Yan warriors, "Later, all of you, attack Chu Xiu with me." Hearing Bai Wuji's words, Fang Huai was startled and quickly said, "Brother Bai, the God Weapon Conference is coming. And you will have plenty of time. Why are you in such a hurry?" If Bai Wuji wanted to attack Chu Xiu, that was Bai Wuji's business. They didn't want to get involved. If Chu Xiu was just an ordinary rogue cultivator, it would have been fine. After all, when they attacked him, they could at least curry favor with Bai Wuji, the young lord of the floating snow city. But the problem was that Chu Xiu was not an ordinary cultivator. He was the patrol of the Guanzhong torture room, representing the Guanzhong torture room to participate in the God Weapon Conference. Moreover, the patrol was the backbone of the Guanzhong torture room. They couldn't afford to lose him. If they hit Chu Xiu while he was down and made a move against him, the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall would definitely demand an explanation from them if they were not cowards. Although the Guanzhong Torture Hall was located in the center of the three countries, so they had always been very low-key and cautious, in reality, with the power of the Guanzhong Torture Hall, it was still very easy for them to deal with forces of their level. They did not want to be involved in this mess. Bai Wuji said coldly, "I know what you are afraid of. You are afraid of the Guanzhong torture room. Don't worry, I will take responsibility for this. If the Guanzhong torture room wants to cause trouble, they can come to the northern floating snow city." Seeing that everyone was still hesitating, Bai Wuji said coldly, "What? My words don't work, or have you been frightened by Chu Xiu and don't dare to attack?" Fang Huai and the others glanced at each other and revealed helpless expressions. Bai Wuji had already started to threaten them. How could they not attack? If they attacked, they might offend the Guanzhong torture room, but if they didn't, they would definitely offend the northern floating snow city. Unless they didn't want to live in the northern Yen anymore, the northern floating snow city was something they couldn't afford to offend. Just as they were about to attack, Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu noticed the commotion and looked at each other. They directly stood in front of Bai Wuji and the others. Chu Xiu's strength had proven that he could be their friend, so Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu naturally had to show their sincerity. Looking at the two people in front of him, Bai Wuji said coldly, "Mo Tianlin, Xie Xiaolu, you two don't know Chu Xiu, do you? You've only known him for a day, and you want to stop me for him?" Mo Tianlin said indifferently, "We hit it off with Brother Chu the moment we met. Can't we?" Bai Wuji, you're too materialistic. Is the ranking on the Longhu leaderboard really that important? If you want to make a move, wait until the God Weapon Conference. But now that Brother Chu has exhausted himself, you'll have to go through us first if you want to add insult to injury. You. Bai Wuji's eyes showed a hint of coldness. Just as he clenched the spear in his hand, he saw Xie Xiaolu silently take off the floating feather saber on his back. The top 20 on the Longhu leaderboard was a threshold, and the top 10 was another. Xie Xiaolu was now ranked 12th on the Longhu leaderboard. He was the most capable of making it to the top 10. When he stepped into the three-flower realm, he would most likely have the strength to make it to the top 10. Bai Wuji knew about Xie Xiaolu's reputation in the land of West Chu. He didn't even have the confidence to face Xie Xiaolu alone, let alone Mo Tianlin. Looking at the two of them, Bai Wuji said coldly, "Very well. I'll remember this. We'll see the results during the God Weapon Conference." With that, Bai Wuji reluctantly put away his spear and retreated. Meanwhile, in the field, Chu Xiu, who had just recovered some of his inner force, walked toward Yan Tingting with murderous intent in his eyes. Seeing Chu Xiu's actions, everyone's hearts suddenly skipped a beat. Was Chu Xiu really going to kill Yan Tingting? Even Mo Tianlin was a little uncertain. He murmured, "Does Chu Xiu really dare to make a move? Isn't he afraid that Yan Huainan will go crazy if he kills Yan Tingting?" Most warriors who came from big families like Mo Tianlin would follow the principle of leaving a way out for others in case they met again in the future. Usually, they wouldn't go to such extremes. But now, Chu Xiu's behavior was basically going to go to such extremes. Even if Yan Tingting was Yan Huainan's daughter, he would still kill her. Xie Xiaolu said matter-of-factly, "This woman is so good at causing trouble. If we don't kill her now, Are we going to keep her alive for the new year? If I were Chu Xiu, I would also kill her. Mo Tianlin looked at Xie Xiaolu speechlessly. Xie Xiaolu's master was Chen Qingdi, who was famous for being domineering. Of course, Xie Xiaolu would dare to say such words with him backing him up. However, Chu Xiu didn't have such a master, and Guanxiu was only his superior. If he really angered Yan Huainan, it was unknown whether Guanxiu would be able to help Chu Xiu deal with all of this. Actually, Chu Xiu wasn't thinking so much. He wasn't an indecisive person to begin with. In addition, the crazy and tyrannical side of his mind had the upper hand. So, Chu Xiu's thinking was very simple. If you want to kill me, I'll kill you. I don't care who you are or what the consequences are. The divine martial sect's Xiantian realm warriors revealed endless fear in their eyes. At this moment, they couldn't care less about their superiors. They immediately grabbed Yan Tingting and fled. At this moment, Yan Tingting's eyes were no longer filled with hatred. There was only fear. Previously, she only had hatred for Chu Xiu because she thought she could kill Chu Xiu. But in the end, she realized that even though she had used all her methods, she was still extremely weak in front of Chu Xiu. When Chu Xiu had destroyed all her methods, and she had even started to face the threat of death, Yan Tingting finally knew what fear was. She knew what the fear of death was. As Yan Huainan's daughter and the young mistress of the divine martial sect, who in the entire northern Yan land didn't know about her. Yan Huainan didn't expect his daughter to become stronger, so he had no intention of training her. Every time he went out, he would bring a group of divine martial sect's disciples with him as guards. She had never encountered any danger since she was young. It was only now that Yan Tingting knew what the fear of death was. In the face of death, her love for Yu Luchuan was nothing. Her hatred for Chu Xiu had already vanished and turned into fear. So when the divine martial sect's disciples pulled her away, Yan Tingting didn't refuse. Instead, she took the initiative to escape with them. But it was already too late. Although there was some distance between them, their speed was too slow. Moreover, they were carrying Yan Tingting, who was a burden. Even if Chu Xiu didn't use the internal binding seal, they wouldn't be able to escape with a few Xiantian realm warriors. Yan Tingting took a step forward, and the sound of gang qi gradually came. Seeing that Chu Xiu was getting closer and closer to them, she couldn't help but shout in fear, "Don't kill me! I won't come back for revenge." Yan Tingting's shout was absolutely sincere. Today, Chu Xiu had left a deep fear in her heart. At least, before she could overcome this fear, she really didn't dare to come back for revenge against Chu Xiu. However, at this time, Chu Xiu acted as if he didn't hear her words. The red-sleeved blade in his hand was already unsheathed, and a crimson gang qi slashed across the sky. The blood-refined god gang slashed down with a loud bang without any mercy. The divine martial sect's warriors and Yan Tingting's eyes were filled with despair. But at this time, the sound of angry waves suddenly came. A waterspout suddenly rose from the mirror lake and blocked in front of Yan Tingting like an arrow. The waterspout exploded with a loud bang, shattering Chu Xiu's blood-refined god gang. Everyone looked at Mirror Lake and saw a small boat speeding towards them. There was no one rowing the boat. It was driven by stellar energy, but it was as fast as an arrow leaving the bow. Chapter 232. On the Mirror Lake, the small boat was riding the wind and breaking through the waves. The gang qi swept out, and the small boat moved faster than an arrow leaving the bow. At this moment, there were two people standing on the small boat. One of them was a middle-aged man dressed in white with a refined appearance. He had a faint smile on his face. The other person was dressed in a white brocade robe. He was tall and slender, and his long hair was tied into a crown. There was a crimson long spear by his side, and he looked very valiant. In fact, if one were to take a closer look, they would find that this person was handsome, but he had the soft lines of a woman. His lips were red, and the bridge of his nose was high. Only his eyebrows were raised, and he looked very valiant. His chest was bulging without any disguise. It was obvious that he was a woman. At this moment, the woman looked at the movements on the shore and could not help but sigh. This little girl is taking things too hard. Is it worth it for her to risk her life for a man? Also, Sect Master Yan Huainan is too much. He doesn't have a son, and his disciple is not good enough. So, he decided to train his daughter. In the end, he spoiled his daughter to this extent. By the way, Uncle Shao, you don't like to meddle in other people's business. Why did you help Yan Huainan's daughter this time? The middle-aged man shook his head and said, the hardest thing to repay in this world is a debt of gratitude. When I was traveling in northern Yan Huainan helped me, and I owe him a favor. Yan Huainan sent someone to inform me that his daughter was coming to Eastern Qi and asked me to take care of her. I can't just sit back and watch Yan Huainan's daughter get into trouble in Eastern Qi, can I? But this girl has been spoiled too much by Yan Huainan. She can't stay in Eastern Qi anymore. I'll send her back to northern Yan later. The woman nodded. As she spoke, the small boat had already reached the shore, but it did not stop at all. It flew directly to Chu Xiu on the shore as if it was in the lake. Seeing the two people coming down from the small boat, Chu Xiu's eyes immediately showed a serious expression. The middle-aged man's aura could not be seen at all, but he seemed to faintly merge with heaven and earth. Every move he made was like the spring breeze and rain, instantly clearing away the powerful murderous aura in the surroundings. Looking at Chu Xiu, the middle-aged man frowned and suddenly waved his hand. Suddenly, Chu Xiu felt a cool breeze coming at him. He subconsciously wanted to block it, but this cool breeze did not contain any offensive power. Instead, it dispersed the demonic qi backlash from Chu Xiu's repeated use of the 3 blades of Avicii. It also completely suppressed the madness and violence in Chu Xiu's heart. Little friend, there are both righteous and demonic cultivation techniques in your body. I won't talk about righteous cultivation techniques, but some demonic cultivation techniques can be said to be extreme. For you, it's best not to cultivate them if you don't have to. Otherwise, you will be plagued by inner demons and it's hard to guarantee that you won't fall into the demonic path. The middle-aged man spoke sincerely to Chu Xiu. There was no disdain or disgust for the demonic path in his tone. It was as if he was a doctor narrating a patient's illness. At this time, after the people of Eastern Qi saw the middle-aged man, they were all shocked. Mo and Lin even walked over, bowed to the middle-aged man, and said respectfully, "Greetings, Lord Shao." Seeing Mo Tianlin's respectful attitude and thinking of his surname, there was only one person in Eastern Qi who could be respectfully called Lord by the disciples of the Mo family. If Chu Xiu did not guess wrong, this person should be the Grand Chancellor of Jixia Martial Arts Academy in Eastern Qi, Xiao Baiyu, a martial arts master. Jixia Martial Arts Academy had a great reputation in the land of Eastern Qi. After the imperial family surnamed Lu seized the throne of Eastern Qi, in order to win people's hearts, they established Jixia Martial Arts Academy and took out some secret martial arts methods from the imperial palace for the warriors of Eastern Qi to learn. As long as you could pass the examination of Jixia Martial Arts Academy, you could join Jixia Martial Arts Academy. As for whether you would choose to continue to serve the Eastern Qi Imperial Court after graduation, Jixia Martial Arts Academy would not force you. It was precisely because of this last point that Jixia Martial Arts Academy had attracted countless young talents to join over the years. Its scale was even dozens of times larger than when it was first established. At the same time, it also provided countless talents for the Eastern Qi Imperial Court. Xiao Baiyu was the leader of this generation of Jixia Martial Arts Academy, the Grand Chancellor of the Martial Arts Academy. He had the strength of a martial arts master, had a very unique understanding of martial arts, and was kind. Any young warrior who asked him for advice, Xiao Baiyu would not be stingy and carefully teach them. Therefore, his reputation was also very good in Eastern Qi and even in Jianghu. Chu Xiu looked at Xiao Baiyu and frowned slightly. In the blow just now, Xiao Baiyu directly attracted the water of Mirror Lake to stop his saber gang. Obviously, he did not use his full strength. Otherwise, Chu Xiu could not continue to stand here. A figure at the level of martial arts master was not someone that Chu Xiu could fight head-on. Even if he tried his best, it was estimated that he could not resist one move of the other. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly cupped his hands and said, "Your Excellency Xiao, are you going to save her?" Xiao Baiyu shook his head with a wry smile and said, I have seen everything just now. No one can tell who is right and who is wrong in Jianghu, whether it is revenge or not. The affairs of Jianghu are settled in Jianghu. In the end, the one standing is right, and the one who is dead is wrong. It is so simple. Therefore, I rarely care about these grievances in Jianghu, and I don't want to care about them. But I once owed Yan Huainan a favor, and he asked me to take care of his daughter in Eastern Qi. Naturally, I can't watch Yan Tingting be killed. Without saying anything, Chu Xiu directly cupped his hands and said, Your Excellency Xiao, you can take her away. I have killed enough people today, and she is not one more. As soon as these words came out, Xiao Baiyu, who wanted to explain something, was a little stunned. Even Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. In their opinion, Chu Xiu's character was quite unruly, even to the point of madness. Even if Chu Xiu contradicted Chu Xiu in public, Mo Tianlin believed that Chu Xiu could do such a thing. However, now Chu Xiu did not say anything and retreated sensibly, as if the person who was full of murderous intent and wanted to kill Yan Tingting was not him. In fact, Mo Tianlin and others thought wrong. Being unruly did not mean being an idiot, and being confident was not conceited. Chu Xiu was not so arrogant that he would challenge a martial arts master. Xiao Baiyu was a martial arts master. He had a good temper and treated people kindly, so he explained so much to Chu Xiu and asked him to stop. If it were someone else, regardless of Guan Xiyu's face, it was possible to seriously injure Chu Xiu on the spot. In this Jianghu, it was always based on strength. Chu Xiu's strength was not as good as others, so he naturally had to listen to what others said. If a master showed respect to you, you should accept it. Otherwise, if you did not accept it, your end would be very miserable. Xiao Baiyu smiled. The junior in front of him was very interesting. He was like a different person from the crazy image of fighting against 100 people just now. Moreover, Chu Xiu agreed so quickly, which made Xiao Baiyu a little embarrassed. Looking at Chu Xiu, Xiao Baiyu said, You represent the Guanzhong torture room to participate in the Divine Weapon Conference, so you will probably stay in Eastern Qi for a period of time. If you have any trouble during this time, you can come to me. Hearing Xiao Baiyu's words, everyone present looked at Chu Xiu in a different light. This guy was so lucky that he got the promise of a Wu Dao Grand Master in this way. Of course, everyone also knew that Chu Xiu could get such treatment only because the other party was Xiao Baiyu. If it were another martial arts master, as a junior martial artist, he should give face to him. How could he make any promise to a junior martial artist casually? Chancellor Xiao deserved to be Chancellor Xiao. He was really particular. Just as Xiao Baiyu was about to leave with Yan Tingting, who had been stunned, the woman next to Xiao Baiyu came over, touched Yan Tingting's face with her hand, and said in a slightly frivolous tone, Little sister, a woman doesn't need to revolve around a man in her life. It's not worth living, let alone dying. Isn't it stupid to sacrifice the rest of your life for a dead man? If you really want to find that guy for revenge, you can rely on yourself instead of those useless men. Xiao Baiyu rubbed his head with a headache and said, Well, Luo, stop playing. If you want to participate in the Divine Weapon Conference, just do it, but don't make trouble. Then, Xiao Baiyu left with Yan Tingting. However, at this time, Yan Tingting did not look at Chu Xiu, but at the woman. Her words kept echoing in her heart, and a trace of blush appeared on her face. After Xiao Baiyu left, everyone looked at the woman. The people in Eastern Qi were all muttering secretly, Why did this woman come? The Divine Weapon Conference was getting more and more complicated. At this time, Chu Xiu also looked at the woman. To be honest, it was the first time for Chu Xiu to see such a heroic woman. Although she was dressed in men's clothes, she was not a man disguised as a woman. From her figure and beautiful appearance, it could still be seen that she was a woman, but her innate heroic spirit added a bit of neutral temperament to her. At first glance, people would only think of her, not her gender. At this time, Emoton Lin said, Luo Fei Heng, why are you here? The red kite, in your hand, is originally a precious weapon made by Master Mo Yezi, and it has the foundation to become a magic weapon. Why do you still come to this Divine Weapon Conference? The woman named Luo Feiheng stretched her waist, and the man's brocade robe could not hide her towering breasts, but other warriors of Eastern Qi did not even dare to look at her, and turned their heads away. "You're right, I'm here to join in the fun. But don't you welcome me? Are you afraid of losing to me? Don't worry, we're old sweethearts. I'll go easy on you," Luo Feiheng said in a lazy tone. Lin shook his head helplessly and said, "Who's old sweetheart with you? Don't talk nonsense. We're old acquaintances. In my opinion, you're the same as Xie Xiaolu, bored and bored." At this time, after hearing the name of Luo Feiheng, Chu Xiu took a deep look at her. This woman would also be a famous person in Jianghu in the future. Although her strength was not as strong as Lu Fengxian, her reputation was not less than that of Lu Fengxian. Chapter 233. Luo Feiheng was a woman, but she was a woman who was stronger than most men, whether it was in the original story or now. Currently, Luo Feiheng was at the peak of the physical invulnerability stage and was ranked 11th on the Longhu leaderboard, even higher than Xie Xiaolu. Luo Feiheng was born in the Luo family of Wu County, one of the 9 great families. The Luo family's strength was considered average among the 9 great families, about the same as the Mo family of Shangyang, but slightly stronger. Usually, a woman from a big family like this would be nurtured into a well-bred young lady by the family, and then married into a family or sect of equal status. Both sides would unite by marriage and increase each other's strength. But for some reason, Luo Feiheng had always been against this kind of thing since she was young. She believed that she wasn't inferior to any man, and in fact, this was indeed the case. In the entire younger generation of the Luo family, no one could compare to Luo Feiheng. In the past, the Luo family's old ancestor had some friendship with Mo Yezi, which allowed Mo Yezi to forge a weapon for a disciple of the Luo family. Because of this, the younger generation of the Luo family began to compete fiercely for this position. Everyone thought that the position would fall into the hands of the most outstanding person in the younger generation of the Luo family, Luo Feiheng's brother, Luo Feiyun. But in the end, Luo Feiheng came out of nowhere and defeated her brother in front of everyone. In the eyes of the elders of the Luo family, Luo Feiheng's actions were simply nonsense. But who would have thought that the weapon forged by Mo Yezi would be exceptionally suitable for Luo Feiheng? This weapon was the blood spear, red kite, that Luo Feiheng was currently wielding. Mo Yezi even asserted that this red kite would only be an ordinary 5th revolution precious weapon in the hands of others, but in the hands of Luo Feiheng, it had the potential to become a divine weapon. This was because Mo Yezi had his own rules when it came to smithing. The weapon he personally forged had to be chosen by the person, not the other way around. Therefore, since Red Kite had chosen Luo Feiheng, the weapon belonged to her. Even if the Luo clan used their status as elders to take Red Kite away, they would still offend Mo Yezi. The people of the Luo clan were not idiots to offend a master blacksmith over a weapon. They could only pinch their noses and accept it. However, ever since then, Luo Feiheng had started to make a name for himself. Not only was he invincible within the Luo family, but he had also started to roam the underworld and kill his way through it. Of course, in the Luo family, there were still many elders who believed that Luo Feiheng was a woman and was destined to marry in the future. She was talented and could be trained as an elite disciple, but the Luo family's main resources should be trained to train disciples like Luo Feiyun. Although the family did not support her, Luo Feiheng relied on her own strength to enter the Jixia Martial Arts Academy. She used the resources of the Jixia Martial Arts Academy to start her cultivation, which was why she was so familiar with Xiao Baiyu. It was not only because Xiao Baiyu knew her father and could be regarded as her elder, but also because Xiao Baiyu was also one of her teachers. After a few years, Luo Feiheng had fought her way to the 11th place on the Longhu list and was about to enter the top 10. As for her brother, who was trained by the Luo family with all their resources, he had not officially stepped into the underworld and was still practicing hard in the Luo family. It was not that he did not dare to, but that he did not have the confidence. As a disciple of the 9 great families, it would be very shameful if he did not perform well in the underworld. Although the wind-sweeping tower would place anyone on the Longhu leaderboard as long as they had a decent battle record because of their relationship with the Luo clan, it was embarrassing enough that his younger sister was ranked 11th on the Longhu leaderboard while he could not even make it into the top 50. Now, Luo Feiheng was very famous. It was not easy for a woman to have such a high status in the underworld, which was mostly dominated by men. But Chu Xiu knew that Luo Feiheng's future would not be so easy. The Luo family of Wujuan was not weak, but it was not strong either. In the later period, the Luo family encountered some crises, which led to the decline of the family. Therefore, the Luo family decided to marry Luo Feiheng into the Xiahou family of Southern Song, which was also one of the 9 great families. The Xiahou family of Southern Song was ranked in the top of the 9 great families. The Xiahou family valued Luo Feiheng very much. After all, Luo Feiheng's strength was obvious. If she married a young hero of the Xiahou family, as long as she gave birth to a child, 99% of the child's talent would be very outstanding or even amazing. As long as Luo Feiheng married into the Xiahou family would also marry a daughter to Luo Feiheng's older brother, Luo Feiyun. Both sides would be connected by marriage and support each other. In all fairness, the Xiahou family really did not have the intention to take advantage of the situation. Even if it was a marriage of equal status. It was considered kind and did not have the intention to harm the Luo family. But Luo Feiheng herself was not willing to be a tool for the marriage. In her opinion, she was better than her useless brother in every aspect. Why should she go through the marriage and let the other party enjoy the fruits of her labor and inherit the position of the family head, just because she was a woman? Therefore, in a conflict, Luo Feiheng actually crippled Luo Feiyun in a fit of anger. Not only did she cripple his cultivation, but she also crippled his qualification to be a man. Then she betrayed the Luo family. This incident not only caused a great blow to the Luo family, but also offended the Xiahou family. The Luo family became a laughingstock. Therefore, from then on, the Luo family began to pursue Luo Feiheng with all their strength. But in the end, Luo Feiheng became stronger and stronger. Not only did the Luo family fail to capture Luo Feiheng, but they also promoted his growth. In the end, Luo Feiheng even built a force from scratch. He named it the Bu-Er Palace, which meant that he was a man of his word. In the original plot, Luo Feiheng's Bu-Er Palace had developed to a point where it was even stronger than the Wu County's Luo family. It was unknown if the Luo family regretted their decision. If they chose to break the convention and let a woman, Luo Feiheng, become the successor of the Luo family, it was estimated that the Luo family would be the second ending. At this time, Luo Feiheng felt Chu Xiu's gaze on her. She raised her beautiful eyebrows and looked at Chu Xiu. You fought 100 alone. Just now, you were very imposing. Ranking you 18th on the Longhu list seems to have underestimated you. Now, I really want to spar with you. But I won't bully you. After the battle just now, you've suffered quite a lot of injuries. When the deity weapon conference starts, let's spar again. Chu Xiu smiled and said, since Miss Luo is interested, this one will naturally accompany you. In all fairness, Chu Xiu admired Luo Feiheng's behavior. It had nothing to do with her gender, it was all because of her unyielding attitude. If Chu Xiu were to be in Luo Feiheng's position, he would definitely fight back even though his ability was obviously higher than that of others, but he could not get what he deserved. Fairness was never given by others. It was earned by one's own fists and the blade in one's hand. Luo Feiheng laughed heartily, without the slightest trace of a woman's bashfulness. You're not bad. You're much better than Mo Tianlin, that fellow who only knows how to drown his sorrows in alcohol. That fellow doesn't even dare to fight with me now. Tianlin was embarrassed into anger and said, Luo Feiheng, are you crazy? Can't you not mention this matter? The Mo clan and the Luo clan were both Eastern Qi aristocratic clans. The distance between the two clans was also very close. Therefore, Mo Tianlin was acquainted with Luo Feiheng since childhood. In the past, the Luo clan even had the intention of matchmaking Mo Tianlin and Luo Feiheng. But after Mo Tianlin and Luo Feiheng met a few times, he directly gave up and no longer had such thoughts. A woman like Luo Feiheng wasn't someone that he could subdue. In fact, she wasn't someone that a man could subdue. Perhaps in Luo Feiheng's heart, she didn't even consider herself a woman. Therefore, after meeting a few times, the two of them directly became good friends. Of course, Mo Tianlin was still somewhat afraid of Luo Feiheng. This was because Luo Feiheng always dragged him to spar, but he just couldn't beat Luo Feiheng. Although he didn't consider Luo Feiheng as a woman, in the eyes of outsiders, Mo Tianlin always lost to a woman. This was a very shameful thing. Therefore, gradually, Mo Tianlin was somewhat afraid of sparring with Luo Feiheng. Every time Luo Feiheng asked him to spar, Mo Tianlin would directly find an excuse to refuse. Luo Feiheng casually waved his hand and said, "All right, a man shouldn't be so stingy. At worst, I'll go easy on you next time." After saying that, Luo Feiheng directly grabbed the red kite in her hand and walked towards the Jizhou capital. She turned her head towards Chu Xiu and the others and asked, "I want to go to Phoenix Cry Shaoxiang restaurant to drink wine? Which one of you wants to go?" Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu simultaneously shook their heads. Luo Feiheng turned her gaze towards Chu Xiu, but before Chu Xiu could refuse, she said, "Forget it, you just had a big fight with someone, it's better for you to recuperate. Don't waste your primordial yang. Moreover, your whole body is filled with killing intent. Don't go to Phoenix Cry Shaoxiang restaurant and scare those girls." After saying that, Luo Feiheng elegantly waved his hand and directly turned around to leave. Chu Xiu turned his head towards Mo Tianlin with a slightly strange expression and said, "She has this kind of hobby?" In the original story, he only heard that Luo Feiheng's personality was like a man's. It could even be said that she didn't even see herself as a woman, but Chu Xiu had never heard that she also liked women. Mo Tianlin smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Chu, don't misunderstand, although this crazy woman is crazy, when she said to drink wine, she really meant to drink wine and not do anything else. According to her, you men like beautiful girls, so of course she also likes them. A group of beautiful girls accompanying her to drink wine is naturally more pleasing to the eye than a group of stinky men." Chu Xiu nodded his head with a strange expression. This person was really unconventional. Turning his head, Chu Xiu cupped his hands towards Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin and said, "Thank you for your help just now." Previously, although his consciousness was a bit crazy, it was only in terms of his personality. It wasn't that he didn't care about anything. He was naturally aware of the movements around him. Bai Wuji wanted to hit him while he was down. If it wasn't for Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu stopping him, Bai Wuji would definitely have brought people to attack him. Chapter 234. Chu Xiu was a very vengeful person, and he would not forget the kindness shown to him. This time, it was Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin who helped him. There was no doubt about it. Although he knew that Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu were willing to help him, they had their own reasons, and they were also a little utilitarian, but Chu Xiu did not care. If Lu Fengxian was here today, then Lu Fengxian would definitely not say a word, and would directly help Chu Xiu when the Gate of Divine Martial attacked him, but unfortunately, there was only one Lu Fengxian. But no matter what, in the end, Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu helped him a lot. If it was someone else who was narrow-minded, they would probably complain about why Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu did not make a move earlier. Although Chu Xiu's heart was not big, he was not narrow-minded to this extent. Chu Xiu always looked at the results, not the process, so he remembered this kindness. Mo Tianlin quickly waved his hand and said, "Brother Chu, there is no need to be so polite. We only came out to warn Bai Wuji, we did not do much." Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "With my condition at that time, if Bai Wuji had made a move, I would have had to pay a great price to resist. I will remember this kindness." Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin looked at each other, then cupped their hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Brother Chu, you are too polite." Chu Xiu's attitude was exactly what they wanted. Otherwise, why would they waste so much effort to save Chu Xiu? After exchanging greetings with Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin, Chu Xiu was ready to directly return to the Ji State Prefecture to temporarily recuperate in seclusion. Although Chu Xiu had shown off his prowess today by killing 2 3-flower realm martial artists in a row and taking on 100 enemies by himself, he had also expended a lot of his energy. His internal organs had also suffered from the backlash of the demonic qi, which caused him to suffer serious injuries. Fortunately, Xiao Baiyu took action in the end and directly suppressed all the remaining demonic qi in his body. Otherwise, Chu Xiu would not have the time to chat here. After returning to the Ji State Prefecture, Mo Tianlin personally found a safe inn for Chu Xiu to recuperate. The Mo family was the local tyrant of Eastern Qi. There were many businesses that belonged to the Mo family in the entire land of Eastern Qi. The Ji State Prefecture was so big, so naturally, the Mo family also had businesses here, and the inn was one of them. 3 days later, in the inn room, Chu Xiu's internal injuries had almost healed, but he still had no intention of coming out. Instead, he continued to condense his essence, qi, and spirit, wanting to take the opportunity to step into the 3-flower realm. To be honest, this time, Chu Xiu had to thank Yan Tingting. Without her, Chu Xiu had been stuck at the peak of the physical invulnerability realm for so long, and it would probably take a long time for him to break through this bottleneck. This battle could be said to be the most intense and dangerous battle Chu Xiu had experienced in so many years. Of course, although the time when he faced the Heavenly Sin Branch leader was also relatively dangerous, at that time, Chu Xiu could only passively defend, and he only had the strength to withstand one move. Therefore, that battle did not bring much experience to Chu Xiu. This time, however, Chu Xiu had consecutively killed warriors in the 3-flower realm. In addition, he had fought against so many inner and physical invulnerability experts. Although it was not truly 1 against 100, this time, it had brought Chu Xiu enough training. After his injuries had healed, Chu Xiu began to prepare to break into the 3-flower realm. Moreover, Taoist priest Xiancheng's teachings had also brought a lot of benefits to Chu Xiu. Although Taoist priest Xiancheng talked about the 5 qis collecting in mind, these principles were the same as understanding one method, and Chu Xiu also had some understanding of the 3-flower realm. In the 5-tier of qi-controlling realm, the inner and physical invulnerability realms were different worlds. At the 3-flower realm and 5 qis collecting in mind, it was another world. The so-called 3 flowers at one's prominence was actually the condensation of one's own essence, qi, and spirit into one, converging into the entrance and aperture acupoints. Finally, it was sublimated to the extreme. Compared to the outer invulnerability realm and the 3 flowers at one's prominence realm, the power that could be unleashed was even more astonishing. Of course, this multiplied growth also depended on how strong the martial artist was. Even if a warrior with a weak foundation reached the 3-flower realm, their accumulation might not be as high as Chu Xiu's. For example, the 2 elders from the Divine Force sect were like this. It could not be said that they were too weak, only that they were not strong enough. Even if they reached the 3-flower realm, they were still not as strong as Chu Xiu in terms of strength. At that moment, Chu Xiu was sitting cross-legged on the bed in the inn. There was not the slightest bit of primary energy around his body. However, his aura was continuously rising. His essence, energy, and soul had been condensed to the extreme, forming cyclones that continuously revolved around Chu Xiu's body, condensing within his profound entrances and acupoints. When this power reached the extreme, at this moment, Chu Xiu had completely emptied his mind, as if something had broken. When the extreme reached the end, it was sublimation. The misty cyclones were divided into 3, circling above Chu Xiu's head, and finally returned to Chu Xiu's body, causing Chu Xiu's body to seem to be shrouded in a layer of light. The 3-flower realm was completed. Opening his eyes, Chu Xiu let out a long breath. The breath he exhaled was actually also a misty and powerful spiritual qi. At this moment, Chu Xiu could be considered to have truly reached the peak of essence, qi, and spirit. After stepping into the 3-flower realm, Chu Xiu's own strength did not change in the slightest. However, if he were to attack now, the explosive power would definitely be several times or even 10 times stronger than before. After truly reaching the 3-flower realm, Chu Xiu finally understood why this realm was called the fifth tier of qi controlling. The so-called qi controlling between inner and physical invulnerability was just the simplest use of spiritual qi. The more difficult part was just the control of vigor, just like how Chu Xiu used vigor to avoid the rain on a rainy day, and Xie Xiaolu used vigor to walk on the surface of the lake. To be able to achieve this level was basically already the limit of the physical invulnerability realm. On the other hand, the three-flower realm was already beyond the scope of using vigor to control power. It was using the spirit to control the qi. Wherever the heart went, it could move mountains and rivers. The explosive power that could be brought was naturally multiplied. Chu Xiu stretched, opened the door, and walked out. Including cultivation and breaking through to the three-flower realm, it only took Chu Xiu 6 days, which was not a long time. At this time, the God Weapon Conference had not yet begun, but there were more and more people in the Ji State Prefecture. As soon as Chu Xiu walked out, he saw a waiter standing guard at the door. When he saw Chu Xiu come out, the waiter hurriedly said, "Young Master Chu, have you come out of seclusion?" Chu Xiu nodded. The waiter said, "Young Master Chu has instructed that if young Master Chu comes out, you can go to the Purple Cloud restaurant to find them. Young Master Chu and young Master Xie are both in the Purple Cloud restaurant." The Purple Cloud restaurant was also a big restaurant in the Ji State Prefecture. However, Chu Xiu was a little puzzled. Why did they not go to the Dragon Gathering Pavilion? That was where a large number of warriors gathered. Is there a problem at the Dragon Gathering Pavilion? The waiter nodded and said, "There is a problem because there are too many warriors coming and going from Eastern Qi. If some of the warriors have grievances with each other, it is easy for them to fight each other in the Dragon Gathering Pavilion." Although there was King and Li's reputation, there were many cultivators who had conflicts in the Dragon Assembling Pavilion during this period of time. Although they were all suppressed by King and Lu, the Dragon Assembling Pavilion was in a mess. In the end, King and Lu had no choice but to temporarily close the Dragon Assembling Pavilion during the Divine Weapon Convention. Hearing this, Chu Xiu nodded. So that was how it was, but Chu Xiu still felt that something was wrong. After all, Jiang Yuan could be considered a local snake in Eastern Qi. His reputation as the Prince of Peace and Joy could intimidate many people. For example, when they were on the 7th floor of the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, Jiang Yuan had wanted to cause trouble for him. However, because they were in the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, he had temporarily given up. Now, Jiang Yuan was so angry that he directly closed the Dragon Gathering Pavilion just because some warriors had a few conflicts in the Dragon Gathering Pavilion. His psychological endurance was a little too low, right? However, Chu Xiu did not care about Jiang Yuan's matter, and directly asked the waiter to bring him to the Purple Cloud restaurant. The Purple Cloud restaurant was considered a big restaurant in the Ji State Prefecture, and it also had a background, but this so-called background was only a local force in the Ji State Prefecture, and it could not be brought to the surface. If warriors had grievances with each other in the Purple Cloud restaurant, they also did not dare to interfere. Therefore, the Purple Cloud restaurant simply gave up. If they wanted to fight in the Purple Cloud restaurant, they could, but if they broke it, they would have to pay double the compensation. Otherwise, they would fight outside. The Purple Cloud restaurant could afford to offend those warriors who did not have a background, and some warriors with a background would not lack the Purple Cloud restaurant. Of course, face was the most important, and some would even pay several times more than the Purple Cloud restaurant. At this time, in the Purple Cloud restaurant, except for the top floor, which was occupied by the disciples of the big families, and it was quiet, the other floors were a mess. Low-level warriors who drank and played finger-guessing games, and disciples of small sects who schemed to curry favor, these people were everywhere. Among these people, there were even some warriors who opened bets, betting on the final winner of the God Weapon Convention. On the first floor of the Purple Cloud restaurant, there was a betting table, which was filled with the names of the young elites who had come to participate in the God Weapon Convention, and below it were the odds. A stout warrior with a kind smile on his face was introducing the information and odds of the young elites who had come to participate in the God Weapon Convention to the people around him, so that the people around him could quickly place their bets. This person was a hall master of the Ji State Prefecture's Wuyuan Gang, Smiling Tiger, Han Kuei. This Purple Cloud restaurant was actually a business of the Wuyuan gang, so Han Kuei could open a betting table here with great fanfare. Pointing to the betting board behind him, Han Kuei said loudly, "Those who want to bet, look carefully, the information and odds are all on it." Wu County's Luo family's young Miss Luo Fei Hung, 11th on the Dragon and Tiger list, holding the Blood Spear Red Kite, odds of 3-1. World Alliance's Xie Xiao Lu, 12th on the Dragon and Tiger list, odds of 2-1. There is also Guanxi Patrol Inspector Chu Xiu, who came from the Guanzhong torture room. He is a dark horse. A few days ago at the Water Cloud Temple he fought against 100 opponents and won. Although he is only ranked 18th on the Dragon and Tiger list, his odds are the same as Luo Fei Hung, 3-1. Chapter 235. Above the Mirror Lake, during the battle at the Water Cloud Monastery, Chu Xiu had single-handedly fought against 100 people. That battle had shocked many people. Chu Xiu's strength was already seriously not in line with his ranking on the Longhu list. Therefore, he was known as the Dark Horse of this God Weapon Conference. He was even comparable to Luo Fei Hung. Just as everyone was making a ruckus on the first floor and starting to place their bets, Chu Xiu stepped into the Purple Cloud restaurant. Seeing Chu Xiu's figure, the expressions of some people who recognized Chu Xiu immediately changed. They could not help but retreat to the side and respectfully lowered their heads. There were many people watching the battle at the Mirror Lake that day. At the very least, many people in the Purple Cloud restaurant had already recognized Chu Xiu's identity. As these people began to fall silent, those who did not recognize Chu Xiu also subconsciously followed the crowd and made way for him. They did not dare to continue making a ruckus. In an instant, the entire first floor of the Purple Cloud restaurant was dead silent. Han Kuei's chubby figure quickly ran in front of Chu Xiu and said respectfully, "Young Master Chu, are you here to look for Young Master Mo and Young Master Xie? They are on the 3rd floor. I will bring you there now." Previously, Han Kuei's smile could be considered kind. However, now, Han Kuei's attitude was flattering. He looked like a pug, which was simply unbearable. No matter what, Han Kuei was a local tyrant in the Ji State Prefecture and the Hall Master of the 5 Elements gang. Although he was not considered overbearing, he was very sinister. That was why he had the nickname of a smiling tiger. But now, he had become a pug. Han Kuei did not care what others thought. In his opinion, in front of such a fierce person, he would not have a problem pretending to be a pug. He could even pretend to be a great-grandson. Chu Xiu waved his hand casually and said, "No need. I can go up myself." Han Kuei nodded and watched Chu Xiu go up the stairs. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. When they couldn't see Chu Xiu anymore, someone at the side asked, "Boss Han, which sect is this disciple from? How can he be so powerful?" Han Kuei sneered and said, "Even if it's a disciple from a major family or sect, except for the top 5 on the Longhu leaderboard, no one can match this person's might. He fought against 100 people in front of the Water Cloud Monastery. Even now, blood can still be seen on the grassland." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present instantly went into an uproar. This young man with a delicate appearance and without any imposing aura is that Chu Xiu who caused rivers of blood to flow in front of Water Cloud Temple? You really can't judge a book by its cover. Among the spectators, there were people who said that Chu Xiu was like a crazy demon at that time and was extremely terrifying. At this moment, Han Kuei muttered, "This person has actually come out of seclusion as well. I hope he doesn't cause any trouble later. Otherwise, we should learn from King and Lu and just close down the Purple Cloud restaurant." At this moment, not only were there Chu Xiu's friends in the Purple Cloud restaurant, but there were also many people who didn't like him. The Purple Cloud restaurant didn't have such strict rules as the Dragon Assembling Pavilion. Every floor was open to anyone. So, when Chu Xiu stepped into the 3rd floor, the cultivators who were drinking and chatting in the restaurant immediately stopped talking. After a while, they started talking in low voices again. At this moment, Bai Wuji was also on the 3rd floor with his people. When he saw Chu Xiu arrive, he only glanced coldly at Chu Xiu but didn't say anything. The strength that Chu Xiu had displayed previously had shocked him. Bai Wuji didn't even have the courage to fight Chu Xiu head-on. However, he was not Lin Kaiyan, who would not be able to recover after being defeated once. Bai Wuji, on the other hand, was very open-minded. Even if Chu Xiu was very strong now, he had something that was stronger than Chu Xiu, and that was his background. He was the #1 person in the younger generation of the northern drifting snow city. In the future, he would also be nurtured as the successor of the drifting snow city. But as for Chu Xiu, even if he joined the Guanzhong torture room now, he would only be a member of the Guanzhong torture room. The Guanzhong torture room didn't have the habit of nurturing successors, it had always been the most capable. By the time he became the successor of the city lord and received the resources and inheritance of the drifting snow city, Chu Xiu would probably still be in the Guanzhong torture room scheming against each other. Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu were sitting in the corner. When they saw Chu Xiu coming, they quickly called for Chu Xiu to come over. "Brother Chu, your injuries healed quite quickly. You've already come out of seclusion in such a short time," Mo Tianlin said. Chu Xiu picked up the wine cup and poured himself a cup of wine. "I didn't have any serious injuries, and with my talent, it's normal for my injuries to heal quickly." The main reason why Chu Xiu healed so quickly was because of the glass golden thread goo. Of course, the glazed golden thread goo was Chu Xiu's biggest secret. Other than himself, Chu Xiu would not tell anyone else. Therefore, he could only attribute his healing speed to his innate talent. After all, there were many martial artists in the Jianghu who were innately gifted, like him. There's still some time before the God Weapon Conference starts. Are there any changes in the Ji state capital during this time? Chu Xiu asked. Mo Tianlin said casually, "What changes can there be? It's just that there are more people coming and the competition is also a little higher." "Brother Chu, you should have seen the bets downstairs. You're a dark horse now, and your winning rate in the God Weapon Conference is even close to that woman, Luo Feiheng. If that woman, Luo Feiheng, doesn't join in the fun, I reckon you have the highest chance of winning this God Weapon Conference." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Right, where did Luo Feiheng go?" Mo Tianlin curled his lips and said, "She's still drinking with the girls in the Phoenix Cry restaurant. This time, she's purely here to play, and doesn't care about the God Weapon. Brother Chu, you're really unlucky this time. That woman is crazy, even if she doesn't want the God Weapon. Don't think that she will go easy on you in the God Weapon Conference. Moreover, she seems to be quite interested in you, so when the time comes, I reckon that she will go all out." After saying that, Mo Tianlin seemed to feel that his words were a little inappropriate, so he quickly corrected himself. "I said that she is interested in you, but I didn't mean that, interested, don't think about it the wrong way." Chu Xiu smiled, and just when he was about to say something, Xie Xiaolu suddenly said, "Brother Chu, the God Weapon Conference will start in a few days. Be careful during this time, someone might cause trouble for you." Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Wasn't Yan Tingting taken away by Chancellor Shao? Who else wants to cause trouble for me? Don't tell me someone is really stupid enough to think that if they kill me now, they can still marry Yan Tingting?" Xie Xiaolu shook his head and said, "It's not because of Yan Tingting. A few days ago, a friend from West Chu told me that someone from Sword King City had come. If you had kept a low profile before this, it wouldn't have been a problem. However, you just caused such a huge commotion that everyone in the city knows about you. You even became the one with the lowest odds downstairs. Sword King City must have noticed you. Those fellows are very vengeful." "That's right." Mo Tianlin frowned and said, "Didn't you say that Lin Kaiyun has been unable to recover? Why would someone from Sword King City come? Could it be that Fang Qishao came?" Xie Xiaolu glanced at him and said, "If Fang Qishao came, I'm afraid that it would have already caused a big commotion in the city. The person who came is the head disciple of Sword King City's Xingjian Hall, Sword of Great Light, Fei Mo." Mo Tianlin was surprised and said, "Fei Mo is a person on the Longhu list of the previous generation. I'm afraid that he has already broken through the Three-Flower Realm by now. How could he still have the face to participate in the God Armament Conference?" Xie Xiaolu said, "It's not that Fei Mo is participating directly. It's just that there are several other outstanding disciples in Sword King City in addition to Fang Qishao and Lin Kaiyan. Fang Qishao has learned from all 4 major sword halls, and that doesn't count. On the other hand, Lin Kaiyan is a disciple of the Battle Sword Hall, and the other 3 major sword halls also have relatively outstanding disciples. Therefore, after Lin Kaiyan was unable to recover, Sword King City naturally had to find some disciples to train. These young disciples are all new to the martial world. Sword King City was afraid that they wouldn't know the rules, so they asked Fei Mo to bring them to participate in the God Armament Conference. Although Fei Mo and Lin Kaiyan are not of the same generation, they are good friends in Sword King City. Brother Chu, you have to be careful. Although Fei Mo can't participate in the God Armament Conference, he can make it so that you can't participate in the God Armament Conference either. It was undoubtedly against the rules to kill those who participated in the conference before the conference. But the problem was that the God Armament Conference wasn't a serious competition. Wasn't it normal to settle some grudges before the conference? Although strictly speaking, Fei Mo was a disciple of the previous generation's Tiger and Dragon list and was not of the same generation as them, Fei Mo was still in his early 40s. In the martial world, he was still a member of the younger generation. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly asked, "That Fei Mo you're talking about, what was his rank on the Tiger and Dragon list in the past?" Immortal Lin thought for a moment and said, "I can't remember. He definitely wasn't in the top 10, nor was he in the top 20. I think he was in the top 30. Hearing this, Chu Xiu's mouth curved into a smile. Seeing Chu Xiu's expression, Immortal Lin hurriedly said, "Brother Chu, don't look down on Fei Mo just because of this. At the same level, he was 100% inferior to you. But after all, he has cultivated for many more years than us. This accumulation isn't on the same level. The elites on the Tiger and Dragon list in the past aren't people the 2 divine martial sects, 3 flowers gathering Zenith realm martial artists who died at your hands. The gap in strength between martial artists of the same level was huge, especially among the 5th level of the Qi controlling stage. Some of the weaker 5 Qi's origin realm martial artists didn't even have as strong an aura Qi as Chu Xiu when he was at the physical invulnerability stage. But Fei Mo was different. As an elite disciple of Sword King City and a former elite on the Tiger and Dragon list, Fei Mo's strength was definitely at the top among martial artists of the same level. Just as they were discussing Sword King City, several sword-wielding martial artists wearing white robes and white headscarves came up from downstairs. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. Immortal Lin was stunned. He looked at Xie Xiaolu and said, "I just realized that you seem to have the potential to jinx things." Chapter 236. Judging by the way they were dressed, it was obvious that they were the disciples of Sword King City. The leader of the group was a young man in his 30s. He carried a long sword with a transparent, glass-like hilt on his back. Behind him, a young warrior who was less than 20 years old but had already reached the Xiantian realm said as he looked around, "Senior Brother Fei, the warriors of the Central Plains don't seem to be that strong. Why can't we participate in the God Weapon Convention?" Some of the surrounding warriors couldn't help but feel angry when they heard the arrogant words of the Sword King City disciple. However, they didn't dare to say anything. Although Sword King City wasn't located in the Central Plains, it dominated the Western Desert. Every year, the small countries offered them countless resources. Moreover, because the Western Desert where Sword King City was located was relatively remote, it wasn't as prosperous as the Central Plains. Therefore, the disciples of Sword King City had nothing to do but practice their swordsmanship all day long. As a result, the disciples of Sword King City were among the fastest in the Jianghu. Most of the warriors present would be in their 20s by the time they stepped into the Xiantian realm. However, in Sword King City, those who reached the Xiantian realm at the age of 20 could only be considered mediocre. Fei Mo said indifferently, "You brats shouldn't look down on others too much. The Central Plains is vast and has countless young elites. You can't underestimate them. You'll know when the God Weapon Convention begins. If you can suppress many young elites in the Jianghu like Junior Brother Fong, then you'll have the right to say such words." While teaching these young disciples, Fei Mo looked around and saw that the third floor seemed to be full. Just as he was about to step into the fourth floor, he saw a figure and couldn't help but stop in his tracks. Fei Mo raised his hand and asked the other disciples of Sword King City to stop. Then he walked towards Chu Xiu and arrived in front of Chu Xiu. The powerful aura of the three-flower realm bloomed from his body. The aura around him was as sharp as sword qi. A cold light flashed in Fei Mo's eyes as he said, "You're Chu Xiu? The Chu Xiu who crippled junior brother Lin?" Fei Mo had never seen Chu Xiu before, but he had heard his name from Lin Kaiyun and the other cultivators of Sword King City. Because of Chu Xiu, Lin Kaiyun, the most outstanding disciple of Sword King City's younger generation besides Fang Qishao, had been unable to recover from this setback. In Sword King City, there was indeed competition between warriors of the same generation. For example, Lin Kaiyun had always been suppressed by Fang Qishao. Therefore, he felt unreconciled and hostile towards Fang Qishao. Although Fermo and Lin Kaiyun were fellow apprentices, strictly speaking, they were two generations of disciples. There was no competition between the two sides, so their relationship was quite good. Last time, when Lin Kaiyun left with Gu Jianglu and the others, Fei Mo had told Lin Kaiyun about some taboos and common knowledge of the Central Plains warriors. After all, Lin Kaiyun spent most of his time cultivating in Sword King City, so he didn't have much experience in the pugilistic world. Who would have thought that after Lin Kaiyun came back the last time, he would be completely unable to recover from the setback? His spirit, qi, and spirit had already been beaten to the point that not even the slightest bit was left. Although his cultivation was still there, his person was already crippled. Fei Mo had a good relationship with Lin Kaiyun, but it was impossible for him to break into the Guanzhong torture room for Lin Kaiyun. Even if he had the heart to do so, he didn't have the strength to do so. In the end, after he came to the Ji province prefecture, he heard that Chu Xiu had single-handedly defeated 100 people here and displayed his invincible might. He was even listed as the most promising candidate to win the God Weapon Convention. Since then, Fei Mo had been suppressing his anger. Their Sword King City's outstanding disciple was crippled by Chu Xiu, but in the end, Chu Xiu became famous in the pugilistic world. This was unfair. Sitting next to Chu Xiu, Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu suddenly frowned. They didn't have a good impression of the Sword King City's cultivators. These people were used to being arrogant in the Western Desert, but now they were also arrogant in the Central Plains. Did they really think that there was no one else in the Central Plains warriors? Moreover, now that they had decided to befriend Chu Xiu, and Chu Xiu was also sitting at the same table as them, Fei Mo coming to look for trouble with Chu Xiu was also looking for trouble with them. But before the two of them could speak, Chu Xiu said lightly, "I'm Chu Xiu, yes, but there is one thing you need to understand. I, Chu Xiu, will take responsibility for my actions. I won't take responsibility for things that aren't my fault. Lin Kaiyun was injured by me, but I didn't cripple him." Hearing this, everyone present suddenly went into an uproar. Before, they hadn't realized who this junior brother Lin Fei Mo was talking about was, but after hearing Chu Xiu's words, they realized that it was actually Lin Kaiyun, ranked 21st on the human list. Chu Xiu actually crippled Lin Kaiyun before? They hadn't expected that Chu Xiu would have such a glorious battle record, but his courage was really big. Crippling an elite disciple of Sword King City without giving him the slightest bit of face, this person really didn't know the principle of leaving a line for others in the future. Fei Mo said coldly, "Since junior brother Lin returned to Sword King City, his spirit has been thoroughly dispirited. He has completely immersed himself in failure. Although such a person's martial arts haven't been crippled, his person has been crippled." Chu Xiu sneered and said, "That's a joke. That Lin Kaiyun was narrow-minded and couldn't think straight. What does it have to do with me? Don't you know why he attacked me in the Guanzhong torture room? Your Sword King City's people recklessly went to deal with Ghost King Sect's people and ended up getting killed. But that Lin Kaiyun caused trouble in my Guanzhong torture room. Does he really think that my Guanzhong torture room is a place where he can run wild? Besides, I gave him face at that time. Otherwise, do you think it's as simple as a minor injury?" Hearing Chu Xiu's words, those who originally thought that Chu Xiu was ruthless and merciless immediately changed their opinion. If that was the case, then there was really nothing wrong with how Chu Xiu handled the matter. The Guanzhong torture room was also a major force. As an inspector, if Chu Xiu allowed Lin Kaiyun to cause trouble in his territory, where would he put his face? Therefore, teaching Lin Kaiyun a lesson was a very normal thing. But wasn't this Lin Kaiyun a bit too much? Wasn't he just defeated once? How could he be so traumatized that he had a mental breakdown? As a martial artist, victory and defeat were very common. On the Longhu list, apart from the young celestial master, Zhang Qingjin, who hasn't lost. It must be known that even the sword chief of Sword King City, Fang Qishao, was defeated by Zhang Qingjin. Was Lin Kaiyun so arrogant that he couldn't even accept a single defeat? Of course, they didn't know that Lin Kaiyun wasn't so weak that he couldn't even accept a single defeat. He just couldn't accept losing to a person like Chu Xiu, who was born in the wilderness and had always been inferior to him. Fei Mo was silent for a moment. He naturally knew these details, but Lin Kaiyun was his junior brother, a disciple of Sword King City, and a good friend. Could it be that he would stand on Chu Xiu's side? He, Fei Mo, had always been on the side of those close to him and not reason. Looking at Chu Xiu, Fei Mo said coldly, "Chu Xiu, I didn't come here to reason with you today, but to vent my anger on you. No matter who's right or wrong in this matter, I only know that you were crippled because of my junior brother. If I don't vent this anger, where will my Sword King City's face go? My junior brother was unable to recover in Sword King City, but you were so glorious in the God Weapon Convention. My junior brother can't swallow this anger, and neither can I. I won't bully you. Today, I'll hurt you the same way you hurt my junior brother." Hearing this, everyone present was instantly dumbfounded. Sword King City was said to be overbearing, and they'd finally experienced it today. It was simply unreasonable. Right now, Fei Mo was clearly targeting Chu Xiu. Furthermore, his intentions were extremely malicious. The God Weapon Convention would begin in a few days. If Fei Mo heavily injured Chu Xiu now, it would definitely affect Chu Xiu's performance in the God Weapon Convention. At that time, Chu Xiu, who had the highest chance of winning, would become the one with the lowest chance of winning. Everyone couldn't help but shake their heads. This was the consequence of making too many enemies in the underworld. Chu Xiu had already overcome the tribulation of the divine martial sect, and he probably hadn't even recovered from his injuries yet. But now, Sword King City's people had come looking for trouble. For others, part of the reason why they participated in the God Weapon Convention was for the God Weapon, and the other part was with the intention of networking. However, Chu Xiu was different. He was purely here to settle his grudges. Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu, who were sitting at the same table, frowned when they saw Sword King City's overbearing attitude. They wanted to say something, but Chu Xiu stopped them. Looking at Fei Mo, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Face is something that you have to earn, not something that others give you. Your junior brother can't defeat me, so you came to vent his anger for him. If you can't defeat me, then wouldn't it be your master's turn next time?" Fei Mo sneered and said, "You're delusional enough to think that you can beat me? You don't know what you're talking about." As soon as his voice fell, Fei Mo didn't continue talking nonsense with Chu Xiu. Instead, he directly grabbed Chu Xiu. 5 dazzling golden lights erupted from his 5 fingers. Impressively, they were 5 incomparably sharp sword chi. Fei Mo wasn't afraid that others would say that Sword King City was overbearing and shameless. Sword King City's people had already seen through it. In the underworld, strength was the most important thing. So what if they were overbearing? As long as Sword King City's swords were sharp enough, they could shut most of the underworld's people up. Seeing Fei Mo's attack, Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu's hearts trembled. Fei Mo was in the top 30 of the Longhu list in the past. There was no need to doubt his strength. They might not be afraid of him when they were at the same level, but Fei Mo had cultivated for more than a decade more than them. His accumulation was terrifying. However, before they could make a move, Chu Xiu had already made his move. This move caused everyone's expression to change. Facing the 5 sword chi, Chu Xiu's hand seals were so fast that it was impossible to see his movements. In an instant, a dazzling Buddhist light erupted. The power condensed and did not dissipate. It was like a Vajra subduing demons. Before the seals had even landed, a thunderous sound had already resounded. Seeing this scene, Emotonlin suddenly exclaimed, "Essence, Qi and Soul. This is the three-flower realm." Chapter 237. After breaking through to the three-flower realm, Chu Xiu directly converged the aura on his body and did not show it off. Therefore, Emotonlin and the others did not pay much attention to it. They did not expect it either. After all, Chu Xiu was even younger than them. Not only was his combat strength amazing, but breaking through to the next realm required accumulation and epiphanies, all of which required a lot of time. They all had the guidance of famous teachers and the resources of the sect, but none of them had reached the three-flower realm. Therefore, they subconsciously thought that Chu Xiu would not be able to do so. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would suddenly explode with this kind of strength? This immediately gave everyone a big fright. After Chu Xiu made his move, Fei Mo's expression immediately changed. He had underestimated Chu Xiu. Stepping into the three-flower realm in his early 20s, coupled with the combat strength he had shown before, Chu Xiu could be ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu list. Even the pride of Sword King City, Chief Sword Fang Qishao, did not do better than Chu Xiu when he was the same age as Chu Xiu. However, since he had already made his move, there was no way he would stop just like that. In the previous battle at the Water Cloud Temple, Chu Xiu was still at the physical invulnerability realm. He had relied on his crazy drive to fight against 100 people alone. In the end, he had killed so many people that they were scared out of their wits and didn't dare to continue attacking him. However, in reality, Chu Xiu had suffered some injuries. Now, Chu Xiu had displayed the strength of the three-flower realm in the three-flower realm. It was obvious that he had only broken through a few days ago, while Fei Mo had stepped into the three-flower realm in the three-flower realm for several years. The sword qi carried by the 5 sword fingers was extremely sharp. The 5 sword qi merged in midair and collided with Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel seal. Suddenly, a burst of aura exploded, and a strong force suddenly attacked Fei Mo, causing his expression to suddenly change. Chu Xiu had only just stepped into the three-flower realm, so how could his strength be so great? It was even stronger than what he had accumulated over the years. Break! Fei Mo furiously roared and his 5 sword fingers exploded, turning into golden sword qi that swirled in the air. Only then did he barely manage to block Chu Xiu's seal. However, his body was unable to withstand such a powerful force and was forced to retreat step by step. The floor beneath his feet also shattered, causing the cultivators eating on the second floor to immediately flee in panic. When the two of them exchanged blows, half of the building was destroyed. Han Kuei, who was still on the first floor, heard the commotion and immediately ran upstairs. When he saw this scene, the smiling tiger almost cried like a dog. When Chu Xiu came to the Purple Cloud restaurant just now, he felt a little uneasy. After all, his ability to cause trouble was famous in the Ji State Prefecture. He heard that on the first day he came to the Ji State Prefecture, he offended Prince Anil. After that, he began a massacre in front of the Water Cloud Temple. Now, Chu Xiu came to the Purple Cloud restaurant, which made Han Kuei a little scared. Seeing this scene, Han Kuei suddenly smiled bitterly in his heart. His worries were right. Wherever Chu Xiu appeared, trouble followed. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have coveted these small advantages and just closed the restaurant. The Purple Cloud restaurant was not like the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, which was covered with formations everywhere. They could fight however they wanted. If they really let these two fight to their heart's content, the entire Purple Cloud restaurant would probably be destroyed by them. Masters, calm down. Let's calm down. Why can't we sit down and talk things over? Why do you have to fight? Facing Chu Xiu and Fei Mo, Han Kuei didn't even dare to walk over to stop them. He could only earnestly beg from behind. Unfortunately, whether it was Fei Mo or Chu Xiu, neither of them paid attention to Han Kuei. Standing up, Chu Xiu directly rushed toward Fei Mo. The crimson saber in his hand shone in the entire Purple Cloud restaurant, appearing evil and magnificent. As the saber fell, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Back in the Guanzhong torture room, I didn't kill Lin Kaiyan because I gave face to Sword King City and didn't want to cause trouble. However, since you don't want to accept my kindness, don't blame me for being ruthless. Aren't you close brothers with Lin Kaiyan? Don't you want to get revenge for him? Well then, since Lin Kaiyan has crippled his spirit, I will cripple your body today. I'll make you a cripple so that you can accompany your junior brother Lin." Arrogant. Fei Mo's eyes showed a touch of coldness. Just now, he didn't expect Chu Xiu to have stepped into the three-flower realm. Therefore, he suffered a loss because of a moment of carelessness. However, he didn't even draw his sword just now. He only pointed his sword at his enemy. It should be noted that 70% of the combat power of the warriors of Sword King City was based on the long sword in their hands. The long sword on Fei Mo's back didn't have a scabbard. Instead, it was wrapped in linen, looking a little simple. However, as he held the long sword in his hand, his gang qi erupted, shattering the linen. A touch of bright light instantly lit up the entire third floor. Fei Mo's sword was an extremely beautiful longsword. The body of the sword was golden and translucent like amber, shining with a mesmerizing luster. As Fei Mo poured his astral energy into the longsword instantly shone with a dazzling radiance, looking extremely gorgeous. The name of his sword was Light. Under the extreme brilliance of the sword, it could kill all evil. The blood-refined divine gang, which carried a strong bloody aura, collided with the dazzling sword momentum. Suddenly, a violent explosion of gang qi was heard. The sky was filled with crimson saber aura that fell like a rainstorm from Chu Xiu. The saber momentum was endless, and it was so dense that it was suffocating. A look of surprise appeared in Fei Mo's eyes. Chu Xiu had only stepped into the three-flower realm a few days ago. How could his inner force be so strong? It was so strong that it could even compete with him and even slightly suppress him. Fei Mo shouted, and the sword of light in his hand bloomed with endless brilliance. The sword light was so bright that it looked like the sun. Any darkness and evil would be completely destroyed under this extremely bright sword momentum. As the powerful sun-like sword momentum fell, everyone saw the dazzling light erupt, and countless blood-colored saber auras were extinguished under the light. At this moment, Fei Mo actually had the upper hand. As a figure in the top 30 of the Longhu list of the previous generation, Fei Mo still had some skills. Although he was kicked out of the list and couldn't step into the three-flower realm on the list, he still had some skills. Fei Mo was from the Xingjian Hall, and he was best at various sword techniques. He was the most powerful when it came to sword techniques. His bright sword of light was powerful and heavy. It could be said to be an impeccable sword technique with no weaknesses, except for the large consumption of internal force. However, he was still a disciple from the Sword King City. For disciples of big sects like them, the foundation was the most important. Fei Mo's internal force cultivation was also very strong. Coupled with the fact that he had stepped into the three-flower realm for several years, he could completely control this powerful sword technique. However, at this moment, under the endless brilliance, a black light bloomed. Like a flower blooming on the other side of hell, the blade slashed open the door to hell. Endless demonic aura and deathly will burst out. Chu Xiu slashed out the second blade of the Avicii Path's 3 blades. He had become very familiar with this blade after absorbing demonic aura into his body twice, and its power was even greater than before. Coupled with the fact that he had reached the three-flower realm, the explosive power was even more amazing. Under this blade, the light was instantly torn apart by the darkness, and the sound of the saber aura breaking through the wind seemed to be the roar of evil spirits. Everyone only heard a loud bang, and the sword momentum of the bright sword of light was instantly extinguished. Fei Mo's figure was directly blown away by Chu Xiu's powerful blade, smashing the wall of the Purple Cloud restaurant and falling on the street. There was a hint of coldness in Chu Xiu's eyes. He moved his body and chased after Fei Mo onto the street. When Han Kuei saw this, he wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead. He thought to himself that the two of them had finally left. They had only destroyed one floor and one wall. He was already lucky that they hadn't destroyed the entire Purple Cloud restaurant. At this moment, the people in the Purple Cloud restaurant saw this scene and immediately walked to the window to watch. The warriors on the street also immediately moved away, looking at Fei Mo with curious eyes. At this moment, Fei Mo could be said to be extremely miserable, completely lacking the domineering appearance he had before. His strength was considered strong among those in the Three-Flower Realm, so he was not killed or seriously injured after taking the second of Chu Xiu's 3 blades of Avicii. However, at this moment he was not feeling good. Although the saber aura was blocked, the cold demonic chi saber will entered his body and stirred up the meridians in his body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Some of the warriors on the street recognized Fei Mo. After all, Sword King City's attire was very eye-catching. They were still wondering who was so strong that they could beat up a warrior from Sword God Mountain like this. On the other side, Chu Xiu directly jumped down from the 3rd floor. He held the Great Vajra Wheel seal in his hand, and his eyes flashed with killing intent as he directly attacked Fei Mo. Previously in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu had saved Sword King City some face and did not go too far. However, who knew that Sword King City would not take the face he had given them this time? Since that was the case, they could not blame Chu Xiu for being ruthless. Previously, Mo Tianlin felt that Chu Xiu always wanted to go to the extreme when he attacked. In fact, his guess was right. This was Chu Xiu's style. He would either not do anything, or he would go to the extreme. Although he was cautious in his thinking, he was too indecisive. If one did not have the strength to go to the extreme, it was reckless. However, if one had the strength, it was decisive. This time, he came to the God Weapon Conference to represent the reputation and image of the Guanzhong torture room. The more power he made, the happier the Guanzhong torture room would be. This was because Chu Xiu was making the Guanzhong torture room proud. Now that he had crippled Fei Mo, it also meant that the Guanzhong torture room had crippled Fei Mo. When the people from Sword King City came looking for trouble, if Guan Xiu did not help him, she would be slapping herself in the face. It would seriously affect the hearts of the people in the Guanzhong torture room. Chapter 238. Chu Xiu's Great Vajra Wheel seal came crashing down with incomparably fierce power. The Buddha's light contained dense killing intent. The sword of light in Fei Mo's hand bloomed with even more intense and dazzling aura. However, under Chu Xiu's ferocious seal technique, it shattered with a loud bang. Fei Mo's sword momentum had always been majestic and oppressive. He didn't expect that he would one day be suppressed by a warrior who had just stepped into the Three-Flower Realm. After a series of fierce attacks, Fei Mo retreated step by step. He couldn't resist Chu Xiu's violent offensive at all. However, Fei Mo was still tough. After all, he was an elite disciple from Sword King City. He was also once ranked on the Longhu list. Even if he was at a disadvantage now, he didn't admit defeat or beg for mercy. Perhaps he could tell from how ruthless Chu Xiu was when he attacked that Chu Xiu would definitely cripple or kill him this time. Of course, whether it was crippling or killing Fei Mo didn't make much difference. For warriors, especially those with status and level like Fei Mo, crippling him was even crueler than killing him. Lin Kaiyun was just taking things too hard. Once he pulled himself together, he would still be an outstanding disciple of the younger generation in Sword King City. However, if Fei Mo's martial arts were crippled, he would be crippled for the rest of his life. Now that Fei Mo had been forced into a desperate situation by Chu Xiu, he no longer hesitated. He directly spat out a mouthful of blood and attached the scorching power to his long sword. In an instant, his sword of light bloomed with a blood-red brilliance. And that wasn't the end of it. Blood light flowed in Fei Mo's hand as the power of qi and blood was continuously poured into his sword of light, causing the originally amber longsword to have the same material as the red sleeve blade in Chu Xiu's hand. With a furious roar, the blood-red longsword in Fei Mo's hand slashed down, and the blood-red sword aura exploded. Although it did not have the sharpness of the sword aura, the The sword aura continued for several feet, bringing with it the afterglow of the blood-red setting sun. Although it seemed inconspicuous, it contained an extreme power. Fei Mo's attack, which was burning the power of his blood and qi, fell down. Like a scarlet setting sun, the aura qi contained a terrifying power. Even Chu Xiu's blood-refined god aura couldn't resist such a desperate move. Therefore, at this moment, Chu Xiu immediately used the internal binding seal and retreated. However, Fei Mo's move was not easy to dodge. No matter how fast a person was, they could not be faster than astral qi. Just as Chu Xiu retreated, Fei Mo shouted, "Go to hell!" With a loud bang, Fei Mo poured all the power of qi and blood in his body into the Sword of Light. The Sword of Light shattered, and the scattered sword aura sealed the surrounding space with the sharp fragments of the Sword of Light, making it impossible for Chu Xiu to dodge or evade. The desperate attack of an expert at the peak of the Three-Flower Realm was still very scary. As an outstanding disciple of the previous generation of Sword King City, Fei Mo still had a trump card. At this moment, Fei Mo's face was pale. Even the precious weapon he had been nurturing for more than a decade, the Sword of Light, had been completely destroyed. Even if this move could seriously injure Chu Xiu, he would still suffer a great loss. However, at this moment, Fei Mo was shocked to find that Chu Xiu, who was surrounded by countless blood-red sword aura, had formed a seal with both hands. When he blasted out the seal, the space several feet around him was instantly suppressed by a powerful astral qi. Formation formula, Wisdom Fist Seal. Each style of the Fast 9 Words formula had its own charm. If the Great Vajrawheel seal was the ultimate power, and the internal binding seal was the ultimate speed, then the Wisdom Fist seal was the ultimate control of astral qi. The Wisdom Fist seal could cover the sky and cover all directions. This was actually a kind of ultimate control of astral qi, turning everything around into one's own astral qi domain. Although it was very small and could only last for a short time, it was enough for Chu Xiu to use it as a killing move. Therefore, when everyone thought that Chu Xiu would be seriously injured or even killed under the countless blood-red sword aura, Chu Xiu relied on the powerful might of the Wisdom Fist seal to freeze all the blood-red sword aura in midair. Although it was only for a short moment, the red sleeve blade in Chu Xiu's hand had already slashed out a sky full of blood-refined divine aura, shattering the sword aura wrapped around the fragments of the precious weapons one by one. His figure directly rushed out of the sword aura and slashed down with killing intent. Facing Chu Xiu's slash, the martial artists of Sword King City had lost 70% of their cultivation. Facing Chu Xiu's slash, Fei Mo, who was almost at the end of his rope, pointed with his sword finger. However, the light sword aura was easily shattered by Chu Xiu's blood-refined divine aura. Just when everyone thought that Fei Mo would definitely be killed by Chu Xiu's slash, Chu Xiu suddenly withdrew his saber. Some people who didn't know Chu Xiu nodded. It seemed that Chu Xiu still had some sense of propriety. He knew that killing Fei Mo would offend Sword King City, so he wouldn't go to the extreme. However, the martial artists who had seen Chu Xiu's attack in front of the Water Cloud Monastery were stunned. Would Chu Xiu stop? This wasn't his style. It must be known that Yan Tingting was Yan Huainan's most beloved daughter. When Chu Xiu attacked her, he didn't show the slightest mercy. If it weren't for the timely arrival of the martial institution's High Chancellor, Lord Xiao Baiyu, Yan Tingting would have been killed by Chu Xiu. Would he show mercy to Fei Mo now? No, this definitely wasn't Chu Xiu's style. At this moment, although Chu Xiu withdrew his saber halfway, he directly slammed his palm down. His palm glittered with a purplish-black evil radiance. The great purple sun hand shot out and accurately imprinted itself on Fei Mo's dantian. The power of the purple sun demonic flame instantly erupted and completely shattered Fei Mo's dantian. Moreover, this wasn't the end. Chu Xiu's hand grabbed Fei Mo's arm and used the great sacrificial grappling hand, instantly twisting Fei Mo's arm into a twisted dough twist. Fei Mo didn't even have time to scream before he fainted and was directly thrown to the ground by Chu Xiu. Fei Mo looked like a ragged doll, looking extremely miserable. Clapping his hands, Chu Xiu said lightly, "I'm a very fair person. Since you didn't plan to kill me, then I'll spare your life. There aren't many people who can survive under my hands." When they witnessed this scene, the spectators instantly went deathly silent. They were wrong. Chu Xiu hadn't changed his character, and he'd gone from bad to worse and acted even more ruthlessly. Look at Fei Mo's current appearance, you might as well just kill him like this. For a cultivator, one's own strength and martial arts were everything. If one's martial arts were crippled, the feeling of falling from the clouds was simply worse than death. It was a double torture of the body and spirit. Moreover, even if one's martial arts were crippled, there was still a chance to cultivate it back. For example, there were some secret techniques in the pugilistic world that could be used to rebuild one's dantian. There were also some rare spirit medicines that could rebuild one's dantian and so on. But Chu Xiu's viciousness was that he had made double preparations. Not only did he shatter Fei Mo's dantian, but he also directly twisted Fei Mo's arms. If a swordsman couldn't even pick up his own sword, then what use was it even if he recovered his cultivation? Moreover, such heavy injuries required a shocking amount of rare spirit medicines. Even if he was the son of Sword King City's sect, Sword King City probably wouldn't pay such a huge price to save him. At this time, when the other disciples of Sword King City saw that their senior brother had been crippled by Chu Xiu, they revealed a wisp of disbelief. As an elite on the Longhu list of the previous generation, Fei Mo's reputation in Sword King City was almost as great as Lin Kaiyun's. It could be said that he was the idol of these young disciples who hadn't started to roam the pugilistic world. But in the end, their senior brother Fei Mo, whom they usually admired, was easily defeated and even crippled. This was something they couldn't accept no matter what. Senior brother. The Sword King City's disciples immediately rushed over and helped Fei-Mo up before feeding him medicine. The other disciples unsheathed their swords and looked at Chu Xiu with bloodshot eyes. Although some of the disciples' swords were trembling, Chu Xiu didn't dare to attack Fei-Mo. The quality of the disciples of Sword King City was really good. In the face of Chu Xiu, who had just crippled their senior brother, these disciples didn't choose to run away. They even dared to stand in front of him and draw their swords. Although everyone could see the fear in their hearts, none of them dared to run away or beg for mercy. This was the foundation of a great sect's disciple. Not only did they have cultivation methods and martial Dao inheritances, but they also had the unique spirit of a great sect's disciple. Although the cultivators of Sword King City were a bit overbearing, it was undeniable that as swordsmen, they would rather break than bend. Kneeling and begging for mercy in the face of a powerful enemy, people without the slightest backbone weren't worthy of being called swordsmen. At this time, Emo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu also arrived at Chu Xiu's side. Emo Tianlin said in a soft voice, "Brother Chu, forget it. Don't go too far. Let them go." Emo Tianlin wasn't really a kind person, but there were some unspoken rules in the Jianghu. Unless it was the kind of enmity that could destroy a family or sect, both sides generally wouldn't attack a young disciple who hadn't officially stepped into the Jianghu. He did this to remind Chu Xiu not to break the rules. Chu Xiu nodded indifferently and said, "They're just a bunch of juniors who can't even hold their swords properly. I didn't intend to kill them. Let them carry that guy back to Sword King City to report." Emo Tianlin breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Chu Xiu wasn't as crazy as he was last time. But just as Chu Xiu and the others turned to leave, a figure suddenly appeared behind one of the Sword King City's disciples. That disciple didn't notice it at all. Then, the figure reached into the man's back with one hand and dug out the man's heart. Still holding the beating heart in his hand, the figure smiled strangely and said, "Sword King City's cultivators are full of vitality. This heart is a great tonic. Wouldn't it be a pity to let it go? If you don't want it, give it to me." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.